Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. I learned the first rule because someone had taped it over the camera monitor in red duct tape. Do not answer if they knock from inside. At 12:43 a.m., something knocked from inside the Gorilla Night House. My name is Owen Markham, 32, male, and I was only 3 weeks into the overnight security job at Franklin Park Zoo in Boston. I'd taken it because my divorce had left me sleeping in my sister's spare room in Quincy, and because night work suited me better than admitting out loud that daylight made me feel watched. That sounds dramatic. It was. I just liked empty places. Empty places didn't ask how I was doing. The security office sat in a squat brick building behind the tropical forest exhibit, where the public never went unless they were lost or trying to smoke without being seen. At night, the zoo didn't feel like a zoo. It felt like a closed factory that happened to breathe. The air smelled like damp straw, bleach, old bananas, wet concrete, and that sour animal musk that clung to the back of your throat, no matter how much coffee you drank. On the desk in front of me, 6 monitors showed the primate wing in gray-green night vision. Lemurs curled in ropes of tail. Mandrills slept like collapsed old men. The western lowland gorillas were mostly dark humps in their indoor dens. Mostly. The knock came again. 3 taps, careful, measured, not the random slam of an animal throwing itself at a door, not a pipe popping in the wall. Tap, tap, tap. On the monitor, labeled primate, holding /Service Hall C. One of the heavy metal keeper doors trembled very slightly in its frame. Marty, the guard training me, was halfway through unwrapping a turkey sandwich when he stopped with one thumb under the plastic. Marty Bell, 58, male, had worked nights at the zoo for 11 years and carried himself like a man who had survived by not being curious. He had a white beard trimmed close to his jaw, a bad left knee, and a habit of calling every animal sir or ma'am, as if that might help during an incident. He looked at the monitor, then at the taped rule, then at me. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He put the sandwich down slowly. "Yep, that's from inside. Yep, a keeper. No keeper S in there." The third knock came before I could ask anything else. Tap, tap, tap. It was polite enough to be worse. Marty reached past me and lowered the volume on the radio scanner, like sound itself might encourage whatever was happening. The office heater rattled under the window. Somewhere outside, one of the peacocks made a cracked, ugly cry from the dark, a noise like someone tearing cloth with their teeth. I laughed once because my body didn't know what else to do. Marty didn't. "Rule binder," he said. "What?" He pointed with his sandwich. "Drawer, bottom left." I opened it and found a black 3-ring binder with a peeling label that said Overnight Primate Procedures, Security Copy. The pages were warped from moisture. Some were printed. Some were handwritten. A few had yellow sticky notes layered over older notes, like nobody wanted to remove the first warning, only bury it under new ones. Marty flipped it open without looking at the table of contents. His finger landed on Rule 3. If knocking is heard from inside a primate holding area after final keeper lockout, do not respond verbally. Do not approach the door alone. Confirm all locks by camera only. Notify senior animal staff if knocking continues longer than 5 minutes. I read it twice. That's an actual rule. Marty gave me a tired sideways glance. It's in the binder. That doesn't answer my question. It answers the one that matters. The knocking stopped. On the monitor, the door settled. Nothing moved in the service hall except a moth beating itself against the caged light fixture. I wanted to say something smart. I wanted to be the new guy who didn't rattle. Instead, I noticed my palms had left damp prints on the edge of the desk. The radio chirped. "Security base, this is Lena. You boys seeing Hall C?" Marty picked up the handset. "We're seeing it." Lena Ortiz, 41, female, was the senior night animal care technician, though everyone just called her the night keeper. Had a calm, clipped way of speaking that made emergencies feel scheduled. I'd met her twice before. Once when she showed me how far back to stand from the orangutan mesh, and once when she caught me eating a protein bar too close to the commissary bins and told me the rats had more confidence than fear. "Any personnel inside?" Marty asked. "Negative," Lena said. "Last keeper cleared tropical forest at 2012. I signed off myself." Marty looked at me as if to say, "There." Normal answer. "Paperwork exists. Paperwork protects us." Then Lena added, "Do not go down there yet." Yet. That was the word that stuck. Marty pressed the handset again. "Copy." I watched Hall C on the monitor. The camera angle showed a narrow concrete corridor washed in security light, with painted arrows on the floor and steel doors on either side. At the far end, where the hallway bent left toward the gorilla dens, something pale lay near the drain. It might have been a rag. It might have been a keeper glove. It hadn't been there during my 11 o'clock camera sweep. "What's that?" I said. Marty leaned closer. His beard brushed his collar with a dry rasp. "Probably trash. Trash moves itself around here. In this place," he said. "Sometimes, yeah." But he didn't smile. The rest of the zoo kept making ordinary night sounds, which somehow made the office feel smaller. The vending machine compressor clicked on. Rainwater ticked through a gutter outside. A delivery truck backed up somewhere near the service road, faint beeps bending through the walls. Marty told me to run the camera log. I clicked back through the footage, hands clumsy on the mouse. 12:38, empty hall. 12:39, still empty. 12:40, a blur near the bottom edge of the frame. 12:41, the pale thing appeared beside the drain. At 12:42, the door shook once. At 12:43, the knocking started. Could one of the gorillas have gotten into the service hall? I asked. Marty said nothing for a second too long. They shouldn't be able to. That's not no. That's zoo work. Lena came over the radio again. "Base, I need both of you to stay put and keep eyes on cameras. I'm waking Dr. Cho." Dr. Hannah Cho, 36, female, was the on-call veterinarian that night. I'd only seen her in passing, walking through the service gate with a canvas bag over one shoulder, dark hair tied up, face set in the permanent exhaustion of someone whose patience could bite through bone and still need compassion afterward. Marty answered, "Copy." Knock count was 9 total. No vocal response. "Good," Lena said. "And Owen," I stiffened. "Yeah, you read the red note yet?" My eyes went to the duct tape over the monitor. "Yeah, follow it." The radio clicked off. Marty took one bite of his sandwich, chewed twice, then wrapped it again and set it aside. That was when I started getting scared. Not because of the knock, because Marty had worked through blizzards, break-ins, escaped cranes, and one drunk guy who climbed into the kangaroo yard on a dare. Marty did not waste food unless his stomach had already made a decision. I tried to focus on the screen. The pale object near the drain had a shape now. 5 fingers, a glove, a blue nitrile glove, half inflated with trapped air, twitching whenever the ventilation kicked on. Could have fallen out of someone's pocket, I said. Marty nodded. Could have. Neither of us believed it enough to relax. At 12:56, headlights swept across the office window. Lena's cart rolled up outside, electric motor whining softly in the rain. She came in without knocking, which I appreciated more than I wanted to admit. Lena was short, solid, and dressed in waterproof pants, a zoo fleece, and rubber boots muddy around the soles. She smelled faintly of hay and disinfectant. Her face looked calm, but she had a catch pole in one hand and a ring of keys in the other, each key tagged with colored plastic. Behind her came Dr. Cho, pulling on a blue jacket over scrubs. Her eyes were alert in a way that made me feel more exposed. "You're the new overnight?" Dr. Cho asked me. "Owen." "Hannah," she said. "Do exactly what Lena says, even if it sounds rude." "It always sounds rude," Lena said, "because people keep trying to die creatively," Marty grunted. Hall C glove by the drain, door movement and knocking. Lena stepped close to the monitor, not touching the desk. "Show me the playback." I replayed it once, then again. Nobody spoke during the second viewing. Dr. Cho rubbed the bridge of her nose. "That's not a gorilla hand." "No," Lena said. "You sure?" I asked. Lena looked at me. "A gorilla doesn't put on nitrile gloves, Owen. Fair." She turned to Marty. "South Service entrance still alarmed." Marty checked the panel. "Green across. Roof hatch, green. Public doors, green," I said, "so nobody got in." Lena didn't answer right away. Then she said, "The alarms say nobody got in. A small distinction. A nasty one." The radio popped again, this time with another voice. "Base, this is Aaron at gate 2. You guys expecting pest control?" Aaron Price, 24, male, was the other guard on shift, stationed near the main entrance. He was younger than me, broad-shouldered, cheerful in a way that made him seem underqualified for the dark. He had a Boston accent that came and went depending on how tired he was. Marty grabbed the handset. "Negative." "Why?" "There's a white van parked off Blue Hill Ave by the staff fence. No logo. Lights off. I saw somebody move near it, but they ducked back when I hit the spotlight." Lena's jaw tightened. Dr. Cho said very quietly, again. Marty heard it too. "Aaron, stay in your booth. Do not approach." "Yeah, no problem," Aaron said, suddenly less cheerful. Wasn't planning to make friends. Lena looked at the monitors, then at the binder, then at the ring of keys in her hand. "We have 2 possibilities," she said. 1, someone tossed a glove into Hall C earlier, and an animal or airflow moved it. The knocking is environmental. We document it and look stupid in the morning. And 2, I asked. She turned the key ring once around her finger. Metal clicked softly, a tiny chain of cold sounds. 2, somebody is inside a restricted primate area and wants us to open a door. Outside, rain tapped harder on the window. On the monitor, the corridor remained empty. The door did not move. The glove near the drain lifted one finger in the draft, then settled again. Marty said, "We call Boston PD." "Already did," Lena said. "Dispatch said units are tied up, but they'll send one when available. Until then, we verify from outside only. No interior entry unless we confirm a person in distress." "What if they knock again?" I asked. Lena looked at the red tape over the monitor. "Then we don't answer." Dr. Cho zipped her jacket. Lena, if it's a person, every minute matters. If it's not, Lena said, opening the wrong door matters more. That sentence hung there, practical and awful. I thought about my sister's spare room, about the stack of bills on her kitchen counter, about how I told her this job was boring, mostly walking fences and checking locks, nothing like police work. I'd said it like a joke because I'd washed out of police academy 8 years earlier after freezing during a live scenario drill, standing there with a blue rubber training gun while everyone shouted for me to move. My private fear was simple. When something real happened, I stopped being useful. And now everyone in the room was looking at the monitors, waiting for the building to tell us what kind of night this was going to be. At 1:04 a.m., Hall C's camera flickered. Once, twice. The image tore into gray lines, then came back. The glove was gone. Marty whispered, "Nope." Lena lifted the radio. "Aaron, confirm visual on that van." No answer. Aaron, static. Then Aaron came through, breathless. "Still here. Sorry, my radio cut. Van's back door is open now." Dr. Cho stepped closer to Lena. "We can't just sit here." Lena looked at me. "Owen, you're with Marty on cameras. If Hall C moves again, you log time and direction. You do not talk toward the monitor. You do not use the PA. You do not joke, whistle, knock back, or ask who's there." I swallowed. "That last one happened before," Marty said. "Don't." Lena ignored him. "Hannah and I are going to the exterior staff fence. We check the van from outside zoo property and wait for police." The monitor flickered again. This time, when the picture steadied, the keeper door at the end of Hall C was open by an inch. Just 1 inch. A black seam in the frame. Lena stopped moving. Dr. Cho said, "That door was locked." Marty's hand hovered over the phone. From somewhere inside the primate building, faint enough that I almost convinced myself it was the rain, came another sound. Tap, tap, tap. Not from the monitor speaker. Through the wall. Lena's eyes moved to the service hallway door beside our office. The choice settled over us without anyone naming it. Stay in the office and trust the rules, or step into the zoo's dark back corridors before whatever was knocking learned we were close. Lena tightened her grip on the keys. "Everybody," she said, "decide now." Nobody decided immediately. That was the first bad sign. People like to think emergencies create instant clarity, that everyone suddenly becomes decisive and noble. Mostly, real emergencies make people stare at each other for 2 seconds too long, while their brains try to rearrange the world into something normal again. The tapping came once more from somewhere beyond the office wall. Tap, 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 closer now. Not loud, careful. Marty stood first. Nope. We lock down and wait for Boston PD. Dr. Cho turned toward him so sharply her jacket rustled. "If someone's trapped in there, if someone's in there," Marty snapped. They already crossed 3 restricted barriers and a locked service fence. That doesn't mean they deserve to die. Nobody said they did. Lena held up one hand before the argument could harden. Enough. Rain streaked the office window in silver lines. Outside, the electric cart hummed softly where she'd left it idling. The smell of wet asphalt drifted in through the poorly sealed doorframe. I kept staring at the monitor. The keeper door in Hall C remained cracked open by that same inch. Nothing moved behind it. No shadow. No hand. That somehow made it worse. Lena keyed her radio again. "Aaron, status." Static hissed, then, "Still at gate 2. Van hasn't moved." His voice sounded thinner now. "Can you see plates?" Lena asked. "Negative. Rear S splashed with mud." Marty muttered, "Convenient." Dr. Cho pointed at the screen. "If that door was opened from inside the holding corridor, we may have a containment problem." That phrase landed heavily in the room. Containment problem, not escaped animal. Nobody wanted to say those words yet. Lena finally nodded once, reluctant and tight-faced. "Owen, pull up thermal overlay on Hall C." I fumbled through the camera settings. My fingers slipped twice on the mouse. "Easy," Marty said quietly, though not kindly. The thermal filter bloomed across the screen in muddy colors. Concrete walls glowed dull blue. Vent pipes faint orange. The cracked door showed a thin, warmer line where conditioned air leaked through. And farther down the corridor, a heat signature, human-sized, standing perfectly still beyond the bend. My stomach tightened. Dr. Cho leaned close enough for me to smell coffee on her breath. "Can you sharpen that?" I zoomed. The image pixelated badly. The figure became a blocky smear of yellow and red, still unmistakably there. Marty said, "That's a person." "Or a reflection," Lena replied immediately. "From what?" Nobody answered him. The shape moved, not walking, swaying slightly side to side, like someone standing in place and struggling to remain upright. Dr. Cho swore under her breath. "We have to go." Marty shook his head hard enough that the skin around his eyes tightened. "No, absolutely not. Procedure says no interior entry without police backup. Procedure also says we respond to injured personnel. We don't know it's personnel." Lena stared at the screen for another long second. Then she pointed at me. "Owen, locker cabinet." "What?" "Bottom compartment. Grab the tranquilizer case." That sentence rewired the atmosphere in the room instantly. I crossed to the steel locker wall and opened the cabinet. Inside sat a hard orange Pelican case with a zip-tied inventory tag. Beside it rested a compressed air dart rifle in a locked rack. I looked back at Lena. "You think an animal got out? I think I don't enjoy surprises." Dr. Cho moved beside me and checked the tags with practiced speed. Ketamine darts are loaded separately. We don't arm unless confirmed visual. The fact that this sounded routine made my mouth dry out. Marty planted himself between them and the office door. "You're both acting like this is normal." "No," Lena said. "I'm acting like we've had break-ins before." That quieted the room. I noticed she'd said break-ins, plural. "Animal activists?" I asked. Lena gave a humorless shrug. "Activists. Drunks, YouTubers, urban explorers, people who think zoo fences are dares." Dr. Cho added, 2 years ago, a guy climbed into the orangutan exterior at night trying to livestream himself. What happened? He fell 8 feet and shattered his pelvis." Marty grunted. "Lucky." Dr. Cho ignored him. The orangutan didn't touch him, just watched him scream until we got there. The tapping stopped again. That should have relieved me. Instead, I became hyper-aware of every other sound in the building. Water ticking through pipes. A distant metallic clang from somewhere deeper in tropical forest. The ventilation system pushing damp air through vents overhead. Then came another noise. A low, rolling thump. Not from the speakers this time. From outside the office. Everybody heard it. Lena crossed to the small, reinforced window in the door and peered out into the service corridor. I moved instinctively closer behind her. Hallway beyond was empty, except for fluorescent light reflecting on concrete floors, wet from tracked in rainwater. Then another thump echoed from farther down the corridor. Heavy, rhythmic. Dr. Cho exhaled slowly. That's a gorilla display beat. I looked at her. A what? When they're agitated, she said. They hit walls, doors, sometimes the floor. Marty's voice went quieter than I'd heard all night. Are they supposed to be awake? No. Lena immediately keyed the radio again. Aaron, I need you to check external thermal on the gorilla outdoor yard. From the gate monitor. Yes. Static crackled. Keyboard clicks came faintly through the radio. Then Aaron said, Lena, what? One's outside. Nobody moved. Aaron continued. Large heat signature in the exterior yard near the climbing wall. Dr. Cho's face tightened instantly. That enclosure was secured. Marty swore softly. Lena grabbed the radio harder. Visual confirmation. Thermal only. Cameras are partially obscured by rain. Dr. Cho was already moving toward the dart rifle. If one got through transfer doors, it shouldn't, Marty said. You keep saying that. Because these systems are built so it doesn't happen. Lena looked at the cracked Hall C door again, then at the thermal figure beyond it, then at us. Okay, she said. Hear S what's happening. If a transfer door failed, an animal may have accessed a service corridor. If an intruder's inside, they may have triggered it. Either way, we verify immediately before a public breach. Police are coming, Marty insisted. And if a gorilla reaches perimeter fencing before they arrive, silence. Everybody knew the answer. Franklin Park sat too close to neighborhoods, too close to roads, too close to sleeping people. Lena pointed at Marty. You stay on cameras and maintain radio contact. Marty opened his mouth to argue. That's not optional, she said. Then she looked at me. You're with us. I almost laughed. Because it was funny. Because it felt absurd. 3 weeks into the job, and suddenly, I was apparently part of a zoo tactical response. I'm not trained for that, I said. You're trained to walk and carry equipment. That's not the same thing. No, Lena agreed. It is. Dr. Cho handed me the orange case. Stay behind us. Do exactly what you're told. My hands felt numb around the handle. The private fear I'd spent years trying to bury came roaring back, so hard it made my chest ache. The academy instructor yelling move. My own body refusing. The humiliation afterward. The polite recommendation that maybe law enforcement wasn't the right environment for me. Now Marty was looking at me with the same expectation I hated seeing in people's faces. Prove you're useful. Another thump rolled through the building. Closer. Lena cracked open the office door. Warm animal-smelling air slid in immediately, thick with damp straw and ammonia. Somewhere down the corridor, metal rattled once. Hallway lights buzzed overhead. Let's go, she said. We moved out carefully. The service corridor behind the office connected to the back arteries of the zoo, concrete passages visitors never saw, lined with hose reels, feed carts, mop buckets, and industrial doors with warning placards. The floor sloped slightly toward drainage grates. My boots squeaked softly as we walked. Dr. Cho carried the dart rifle angled downward, finger nowhere near the trigger. That loaded, I whispered. Compressed air chambers active, she said. No dart chambered yet. Comforting. You'd rather I chamber it? No. Ahead of us, another sound floated through the building. Not knocking this time, breathing, heavy, wet, close enough to hear air moving through nostrils. We stopped instantly. Lena killed her flashlight. The corridor dimmed to ugly yellow emergency lighting. I heard it again. HHHHFFFFF. HHHHHFFFFF. Then silence. Dr. Cho tilted her head slightly. Listening. Could be ventilation echo, she whispered. but she didn't sound convinced. Lena pointed toward the intersection ahead. We moved again, slower now. Every few feet, there were laminated emergency procedure sheets bolted to the walls. Big cat, escape, response, chemical exposure stations, primate contact, protocol. One of the papers had been ripped halfway off its screws recently. The corner fluttered in the ventilation draft with a dry, papery tick, tick, tick. We reached the junction leading toward Hall C. The smell changed immediately. Stronger musk, wet fur, and something coppery underneath. Dr. Cho smelled it too. Blood, not much, just enough to sharpen the air. My pulse started hammering. Lena motioned us to stop while she edged around the corner first. The Hall C corridor stretched ahead under dim security lights. The blue glove lay near the drain again. I swear to God it had been gone on the monitor. Now it rested palm up beside a dark smear on the concrete. The keeper door still hung open 1 inch. And farther down the corridor, the heat signature figure was now visible without thermal. A person stood near the bend. Male, tall, wearing a dark hoodie, facing away from us, not moving. "Oh Jesus," Dr. Cho whispered. "Sir," Lena called carefully. "Zoo security. Do not move." No response. The man swayed slightly in place. I noticed his right arm hanging oddly low. Dripped slowly from his fingertips onto the concrete. Marty's voice suddenly burst through Lena's radio loud enough to make everyone jump. "Lena, Owen, respond." She grabbed it. "Go, you need to get out of Hall C right now." Her face hardened. "Why?" Static crackled hard for a second. Then Marty said, "Because camera 7 just came back online." "What does that mean?" A pause. When he answered, his voice sounded smaller than before. "The person you're looking at," another burst of static, "isn't alone." At the far end of the corridor, beyond the cracked keeper door, something massive shifted in the darkness with a slow scrape of metal. Then came a deep chest rumble vocalization, so low I felt it in my ribs before I fully heard it. Not human, very close. And the man in the hoodie finally spoke without turning around. He opened it. Nobody moved after the man said it. He opened it. His voice sounded shredded, like he'd been breathing through his mouth for hours. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just exhausted and hurt. The deep rumbling sound came again from beyond the cracked keeper door. Closer this time. Dr. Cho slowly raised the dart rifle. "Sir," Lena said carefully, "keep your hands where I can see them," and stepped toward my voice. The man didn't turn around. Instead, he whispered, "Don't yell." The corridor suddenly felt much narrower than it had 30 seconds earlier. Hall C wasn't wide to begin with, maybe 8 feet across. Concrete walls painted institutional beige. Exposed pipes overhead. Drains every 10 yards. On the left side were the indoor gorilla holding dens, separated by hydraulic transfer doors. On the right side sat keeper access rooms, feed prep, equipment storage, veterinary staging. At the far bend, beyond the injured man, the corridor turned left toward the night house transfer gates and the exterior access tunnel leading to the gorilla yard. If something large was loose beyond that bend, we were standing in a bottleneck. Marty's voice crackled through the radio again. "Lena, answer me." She pressed the button without taking her eyes off the man. "Go. Camera 7's dead again. I only got 3 seconds of feed. Did you see an animal? No clear visual. Helpful." The injured man shifted slightly. I saw blood running down his wrist now, dripping off his fingertips steadily enough to patter on the concrete. His hoodie looked soaked along one side. Dr. Cho spoke quietly. "He's injured bad. He's conscious," Lena replied. "That doesn't last forever." The rumble came again. Then a loud metallic bang echoed from somewhere around the bend. All of us flinched. The man finally turned halfway toward us. He was young, mid-20s maybe, white male. Rainwater and sweat plastered dark hair to his forehead. One eye was swollen nearly shut. His right sleeve hung shredded from shoulder to wrist. Animal damage, not guessing, not maybe. Parallel bruising crossed his forearm in huge dark bands. Not bites, grabs. My mouth went dry. "Oh God," Dr. Cho breathed. "Please," the guy said, "don't make noise." "What's your name?" Lena asked. "Tyler." "What happened here, Tyler?" He swallowed hard. I could actually hear it in the quiet corridor. "Been through the fence." Me and Grant." The name hung there. "Where's Grant?" Lena asked. Tyler looked toward the bend in the hallway. Nobody liked that. Another metallic scrape echoed from deeper inside. Tyler whispered. He thought the locks were fake. Marty's voice burst through the radio again. "Lena, police just entered zoo property. 2 units only, thank Christ." But Lena immediately asked, "Where are they?" "Front administration gate. They're trying to route through storm closures." "How long?" "Static, 10 minutes maybe." 10 minutes sounded survivable when you said it fast. In reality, 10 minutes inside a concrete hallway with an agitated gorilla somewhere nearby felt geological. Tyler suddenly swayed hard. Dr. Cho moved instinctively forward to catch him. "Wait," Lena hissed. Too late. Tyler stumbled toward us, and the second he moved, an explosive crash erupted from around the bend. Not a roar, a detonation of force. Steel slammed against concrete hard enough to vibrate under my boots. Then came the vocalization. A full gorilla threat scream at close range is not cinematic. It doesn't sound monstrous or supernatural. It sounds disturbingly mammalian, rage and panic forced through lungs the size of industrial compressors. Wet, deep, violent enough that my body reacted before my thoughts did. Tyler screamed too. A huge black shape burst halfway into view at the far bend. Dr. Cho shouted, "Back." Everything became motion. Lena grabbed Tyler's hood and yanked him sideways into an equipment alcove, while Dr. Cho slammed herself against the corridor wall, raising the dart rifle. I froze, exactly like before, not metaphorically, literally. My body locked in place, staring at the gorilla as it charged 2 steps into the corridor. Massive silverback male, over 400 pounds easily. Black fur slick from rain or water. Eyes reflecting yellow under the fluorescent lights. It hit the corridor floor with both fists. Boom. Concrete dust jumped. I heard Marty screaming something through the radio. I heard Lena yelling my name. But all I could focus on was how fast the animal moved despite its size. Not lumbering, not slow. It crossed half the visible corridor in a heartbeat. Then it stopped. The silverback swung its head toward us sharply, nostrils flaring. Dr. Cho held perfectly still with the rifle aimed center mass. "See," she whispered, voice shaking despite herself. The gorilla stared. And then, just as suddenly, it wheeled around and disappeared back around the bend. Silence hit hard afterward. Not real silence. Ragged breathing, buzzing lights, Tyler whimpering in pain, my own pulse thudding in my ears. But compared to the previous 10 seconds, it felt empty. Lena grabbed my vest and slammed me backward into the wall. "What the hell was that?" she snapped. I couldn't answer, because she was right. I'd frozen again. Dr. Cho chambered a tranquilizer dart with trembling fingers. It bluff-charged, meaning, I asked weakly. It could have killed us, she said. It chose not to. Tyler slid down the wall, clutching his arm. Blood smeared across the concrete. He's not attacking like normal, Dr. Cho muttered. Lena crouched beside Tyler. Where's your friend? Tyler looked sick. He opened one of the transfer gates. Why? We were filming. For what? Tyler gave a tiny hysterical laugh that broke halfway through. Subscribers, of course. Lena closed her eyes briefly, like someone fighting the urge to hit him. You broke into a zoo, she said, to make videos. We thought they sedated them at night. Dr. Cho stared at him in disbelief. You thought gorillas were tranquilized every evening. Tyler didn't answer, because there was no answer that wouldn't sound idiotic. Another distant bang echoed deeper in the corridor system, closer to the exterior access tunnel this time. Lena stood immediately. He's moving toward yard 3. I looked at the corridor map bolted beside the alcove. The zoo used color-coded pathways underground. Hall C connected directly to the gorilla indoor dens. 50 feet ahead, the bend led left into the transfer chamber intersection. From there, right tunnel, exterior gorilla yard access, left tunnel, veterinary staging and freight lift straight ahead, emergency containment doors leading toward the ape kitchen and service courtyard. If the silverback reached the service courtyard, there were maintenance exits leading outdoors. Can we seal the containment doors remotely? I asked. Marty answered over radio before Lena could. Tried already. System S not responding. Why not? Because somebody manually disengaged hydraulic locks. Tyler looked away. Lena rounded on him. How many gates did your friend open? I don't know. How many? We got separated. Dr. Cho cut in sharply. Arguing later, sedation now. She started checking the rifle pressure gauge. Lena nodded once. Okay, we do this in steps. First priority, isolate the silverback back into indoor holding. Second, locate Grant. Third, get Tyler medical. Fourth, Marty added over radio, stay alive. Reasonable addition. Tyler tried to stand and nearly collapsed. I caught him under the good arm before he hit the floor. He smelled like wet fabric and panic sweat and coppery blood. Easy, I said. He winced hard. It grabbed me. How? I slipped. His breathing shook. Grant thought it was behind another gate. He started banging on the glass, trying to get reactions for the camera. Lena muttered something in Spanish under her breath. Tyler kept talking too fast now, shock unraveling him. Then alarms started and Grant panicked and hit another switch, and a loud screech interrupted him. Metal grinding against metal. Everybody looked toward the bend again. The sound repeated, then stopped abruptly. Dr. Cho's expression changed first. That's the transfer gate motor. What does that mean? I asked. It means something's forcing the door. A horrible slam followed immediately. Then another. The silverback was hitting the containment gate. Lena made the decision instantly. Move. What? Marty barked over radio. If he breaches the transfer intersection, we lose the whole service level. You can't outrun a gorilla in corridors. No, Lena said, but we can redirect one. She pointed down Hall C, veterinary staging room. Now, we half carried Tyler forward. Every instinct I had screamed against moving deeper into the building. But retreat meant giving the animal access toward unsecured service routes. The corridor smelled stronger, now wet fur and overturned earth. The silverback had probably come in from the exterior yard before doubling back through transfer access. My legs already felt shaky from adrenaline. Tyler stumbled constantly beside me, boots slipping in blood and water. Dr. Cho stayed rear guard with the dart rifle trained toward the bend. As we passed the cracked keeper door, I glanced inside despite myself. The room beyond was chaos, broken buckets, scattered fruit, one overturned maintenance ladder, and on the far wall, smeared across the concrete in red marker, Rule 3 exists for a reason. I nearly stopped walking. What the hell? I whispered. Lena shoved me forward. Move, but move. We reached the transfer intersection 30 seconds later. The layout opened suddenly into a larger square chamber with overhead cage tracks and hydraulic gate controls mounted behind plexiglass lock covers. Yellow safety lines marked the floor. 4 tunnels branched outward. Directly ahead, the containment gate shook violently under impacts from the other side. Boom, boom. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Tyler started crying quietly. Dr. Cho pointed left. Vet staging S through there. The veterinary room sat another 20 feet down a side corridor. Small but reinforced. Stainless steel counters, medical cabinets, emergency lockdown shutters. Safe-ish. We got Tyler inside while Lena slammed the heavy door behind us. The room smelled sharply of antiseptic and animal medication. My lungs burned from running and stress. Dr. Cho immediately cut Tyler's sleeve open fully. The bruising underneath looked horrific now. Dark purple bands wrapped his upper arm nearly completely. He compressed the humerus, she said grimly. You're lucky it didn't snap. Tyler stared at the ceiling with glassy eyes. Grant S. dead. Nobody contradicted him. Boom. Another impact shook dust from overhead pipes. The containment gate outside groaned. Lena moved to the security panel beside the door. Manual shutters still work. She hit the switch. Nothing happened. Come on, she muttered, hitting it again. Still nothing. Marty's voice crackled through the radio. Lena, bad news. Need a line less crowded with those. Power fluctuations just hit the primate wing. Backup generator failed to transfer clean. The lights flickered. Every face in the room changed instantly. No, Dr. Cho whispered. Marty continued. Security fire doors are cycling open default because the hydraulic pressure's unstable. The containment gate outside slammed again. Harder. Lena stared at the dead shutter controls. And then we heard something new from outside the room. Not the gorilla. Footsteps. Running. Human. Fast. They pounded down the corridor toward us. Tyler bolted upright in panic. Grant. The footsteps reached the veterinary door. Then came desperate banging. Let me in, male voice. Young, terrified Grant. Lena moved toward the handle automatically, then stopped. Because underneath Grant's screaming, underneath the impacts against the containment gate, underneath all the chaos and rattling metal, there was another sound. A second set of footsteps, much heavier, closing fast behind him. And then the lights went out completely. Not flickering. Gone. Emergency, red backup strips blinked on a second later, washing the veterinary room in dim blood-colored light. Outside the door, Grant screamed. Then the scream cut off mid-breath with a wet, choking sound, and a massive impact that shook the entire wall hard enough to rattle surgical trays onto the floor. Nobody in the room moved. Nobody breathed. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the veterinary door, something began dragging heavily across concrete toward us. The dragging stopped outside the veterinary door. For 2 seconds, there was only the red emergency light humming above us, and Tyler making a small, high sound through his teeth while Dr. Cho pressed gauze into his mangled arm. Then something heavy bumped the door. Once, not a charge, not a hit, a test. The handle dipped. Lena raised one finger to her lips. Nobody spoke. Handle dipped again. Metal clicked. The door was locked, but it was a veterinary staging lock, not a containment lock. It was meant to keep interns from wandering into medication storage, not keep out a 400-pound silverback who had already bent a transfer gate. Marty's voice came thinly through the radio. Lena, she didn't answer. Outside, something dragged across the floor again. Scrape, pause, scrape. Tyler whispered, Grant. Dr. Cho's eyes flicked toward the door. Don't. But don't, she said, sharper now. The thing outside bumped the door again. Harder. The frame ticked. I had the orange dart case on the floor by my boots. My hands were shaking so badly I could hear the plastic latches trembling when I touched them. Lena pointed at the medical cabinets, then at the small interior window beside the door. We need a barricade. Marty came through the radio again. Camera 9 sees him outside your door. Silverback S between you and Hall C police are at Tropical Forest exterior, but animal staff won't let them enter blind. Good, Lena whispered. They shouldn't. Dr. Cho looked at her. We can't stay here. No, another hit. This one shoved the door inward half an inch before the lock caught. Tyler screamed. The silverback screamed back. The sound filled the room. It pressed against my eardrums and made my knees soften. Lena grabbed a stainless prep table and shoved it toward me. Owen, move. I moved, not fast at first. My brain was still lagging behind my body, but then the door jumped again, and something in me snapped loose. I got both hands under the table edge and pushed until the metal legs shrieked over the floor. Dr. Cho helped with one hand, keeping the other clamped on Tyler's wound. We jammed the table against the door, a cabinet next, then a rolling supply cart. It wasn't enough. We all knew it. The rifle, Lena said. Dr. Cho grabbed it. Will it drop him? Asked. Eventually, 10 minutes, maybe less. Maybe more, depends on dose, stress, muscle mass, where it hits. The door slammed again. The barricade jumped. A tray of syringes spilled and scattered across the floor like glass rain. We don't have 10 minutes, Lena said. Dr. Cho's face looked gray in the red light. I know. Marty's radio voice cut in. Manual containment wheel is in the transfer intersection. Lena closed her eyes for half a second. Of course it is. What wheel? I asked. The red wheel by the gate housing, she said. It can re-engage the main hydraulic lock if power's unstable. So someone has to go outside. Nobody said yes. The door hit again. The prep table bent inward. Tyler started sobbing. I'm sorry. Lena crouched in front of him. Listen to me. Is Grant wearing a black backpack? Tyler blinked at her. What backpack? Yes or no? Yes. What's in it? Camera stuff. Anything loud, speakers, drone. He looked confused and terrified. A Bluetooth speaker for intros. Lena looked at Dr. Cho. Dr. Cho understood first. Distraction. Maybe, Marty said. The backpack is in the transfer intersection. I can see it under the yellow rail. The silverback slammed both hands into the door. The barricade skidded 6 inches. Lena looked at me, and I knew. The manual wheel was outside. The backpack was outside. The animal was outside. And the only person in the room not actively treating an injured man or trained to handle animal sedation was me. My throat closed. "I can't," I said. Nobody mocked me. That somehow made it worse. Lena's voice softened, but only slightly. "You can." I froze out there. "Yes, I'll freeze again." Maybe. The door hit. A crack ran through the small interior window. Lena stepped close enough that I could see sweat shining on her upper lip. "Owen, you don't need to be brave. You need to do 3 ugly little tasks. Open the door when I say. Grab the backpack. Throw the speaker down the left tunnel toward the ape kitchen. Then spin the red wheel clockwise until it locks. That's it." "That's not it." "No," she said, "but that's all you look at." Dr. Cho chambered the dart. "I'll shoot when he turns." "What if you miss?" I asked. "I'll try not to, honest." "Terrible," Marty said. "Police are requesting permission to enter with rifles." Lena grabbed the radio. "No firearms inside unless there's human life in immediate lethal danger. Repeat, no discharge around primates unless commanded by animal staff." Another slam. The door frame split near the latch. "I'd call this immediate," Marty said. "Not yet." Lena looked at me again. "Now." Dr. Cho raised the rifle toward the cracked window. Lena pulled the supply cart back just enough to free the door. The silverback hit it from outside. The door burst inward. Everything happened too fast. Black fur filled the gap. A huge arm came through first, fingers curling around the bent edge of the prep table. Nails scraped metal. The smell hit me, wet hair, musk, blood, hot breath. Dr. Cho fired. The dart struck high in the silverback's shoulder with a flat, plastic thunk. The animal shrieked and ripped backward. "Gio," Lena yelled. I went. Not because I was brave, because she shoved me. I hit the hallway shoulder first, slipped in something wet, and nearly went down. The red light strobed over the corridor. The silverback was 10 feet away, twisting at the dart in his shoulder. Grant lay crumpled near the wall, face turned away, one leg bent wrong beneath him. No time. The backpack was under the yellow rail, just where Marty said. I ran for it. The silverback saw me. His head snapped around. For one awful second, we looked directly at each other. Not monster, animal, panicked, enraged, confused by pain and alarms and stupid human noise. Then he came at me. I dove for the backpack and slid on my hip. Pain flashed up my side. My fingers closed around one strap. The gorilla's hand slammed down inches from my boot. Concrete cracked. I kicked backward and scrambled behind the gate housing as Dr. Cho fired again from the doorway. The second dart hit lower, near the flank. The silverback spun toward her. Lena shouted, not at him, but at me. Speaker. My fingers tore through the backpack. Camera. Battery pack. Tripod. A ridiculous portable speaker with a neon green casing. I hit the power button. Nothing. Dead. Paired. Locked. I wanted to scream. The silverback charged the veterinary door again. Lena slammed it shut just before he hit. The whole frame buckled. I slapped the speaker controls blindly. A burst of sound exploded from it. Some stupid electronic intro music. Bass heavy, cheerful, obscene in that hallway. The silverback whipped around. I threw the speaker as hard as I could down the left tunnel toward the ape kitchen. It bounced once, twice, still blasting music, then skidded into darkness. The silverback followed it, not far, but far enough. Wheel, Lena yelled. I grabbed the red manual wheel. It didn't move. I pulled harder, nothing. I put both hands on it, planted my boots, and turned with everything I had. Pain shot through my ribs from where I'd fallen. The wheel groaned, one rotation, then another. Behind me, the music cut off with a crunch. The silverback was coming back. "Owen," Marty shouted through the radio. "Keep turning." I turned. Metal clanked somewhere overhead. Hydraulic lines shuddered. A warning buzzer coughed weakly, then died. The wheel kicked back and tore skin from my palm. I nearly let go. Then I saw the marker warning again in my head. Rule 3 exists for a reason. Don't answer. Don't open. Don't be curious. We had broken every rule except the one that mattered now. Close the door before something worse happened. I turned again. The containment gate began to slide. Slowly. Too slowly. The silverback rounded the corner. His steps were uneven now. The drugs were starting to work, but not enough. His head dipped, then jerked up. A line of saliva hung from his mouth. He charged, not a bluff. I let go of the wheel and ran 3 steps. That was all I got. Something hit my back like a car door swinging at highway speed. I flew sideways into the yellow rail. My left shoulder popped with a white flash of pain, so bright I couldn't hear for a second. I landed on my knees, couldn't breathe. The silverback loomed over me. Dr. Cho screamed my name. Lena appeared from nowhere with the catch pole, not trying to trap him, just jamming the pole between his arm and my body. He swatted it aside and caught her across the thigh. She went down hard. The sound she made was small and shocked. Dr. Cho fired the last dart. It hit the silverback in the chest. He turned toward her, wavered, took 1 step, another. Then his front knuckles folded weirdly beneath him. He crashed onto his side so hard the floor shook. For a moment, nobody moved. The silverback breathed in huge, slow pulls. Alive, down. But the gate was still open 3 feet. "Wheel," Lena gasped. Her pant leg was already darkening. I crawled, not stood, crawled. My shoulder hung wrong. Every movement made sparks dance behind my eyes. I reached the wheel and dragged myself upright with 1 arm. Turned, 1 rotation. 2. The gate slid another foot. Behind me, the silverback's hand twitched. Dr. Cho shouted, "Keep going." I turned until my palms split open again. The gate clanged into place. A lock pin dropped with a heavy final sound. For 1 second, I thought it was over. Then Marty's voice came through the radio. "Owen, Lena, the exterior yard gate is still open." Lena, still on the floor, laughed once. It sounded almost like coughing. "Manual latch?" she asked. "Outside tunnel," Marty said, "but the main animal is down inside. Police and keeper team can access from yard side if you hold position." Dr. Cho knelt near the silverback, but kept her distance. He sedated, not safe, but sedated. A faint groan came from near the wall. "Grant." Dr. Cho looked over. His face was pale. Blood bubbled at 1 corner of his mouth. 1 leg was destroyed below the knee. Not gone, but ruined in a way my brain tried not to understand. "He's alive," she said, already moving. Tyler began crying harder inside the veterinary room when he heard him. Lena tried to sit up and failed. My leg, I looked down. Her thigh had been opened by the impact against the rail or the swipe. I couldn't tell which. Blood pumped steadily through torn fabric. Dr. Cho threw me a tourniquet from her belt kit. High and tight. Now I stared at it. My one good hand shook. "Owen," Lena said through clenched teeth. "Ugly little task. That got me." I looped the strap around her thigh. Pulled. She cursed so loudly it echoed down the corridor. "Good," Dr. Cho said. Twist until bleeding slows. I twisted the windlass. Lena grabbed my sleeve hard enough to hurt. The bleeding slowed. Not stopped completely, slowed. From somewhere beyond the service tunnels came shouts. Human voices, police, keepers, boots splashing through rain. Marty's voice cracked over the radio, older than before. They're coming in from yard 3, hold position. Dr. Cho was working on Grant now, movements fast and grim. Grant, she said, stay with me, don't move. He made a wet sound. Don't talk. The silverback breathed heavily behind us. Sedated but enormous. His chest rose and fell under black fur. Each breath a reminder that the difference between contained and catastrophic had been measured in inches, seconds. And a cheap green speaker from a dead-eyed influencer backpack. I sat beside the red wheel, back against the wall, my ruined shoulder pressed to my chest. Lena lay with her head turned toward me. You froze, she said. I swallowed. Yeah, then you moved. I wanted that to feel like victory. It didn't. The first keepers appeared at the far end of the exterior tunnel wearing rain gear and carrying portable barriers. Police followed behind them, guns lowered but ready, faces pale under helmet lights. No sudden saviors, just people arriving too late to prevent the damage, but soon enough to stop it spreading. One officer shouted, "Where's the animal?" Dr. Cho yelled back, sedated. Do not approach without keeper direction. The officer actually listened. That, too, felt like a miracle. As the team moved in, the red light kept pulsing over everything. The bent gate, Grant's blood, Lena's tourniquet, Tyler's glove on the floor, my torn palm on the wheel. And beside us, behind the locked gate, the silverback slept under drugs he never should have needed. The conflict was over. The rules had held, barely. But when they rolled Lena onto a stretcher and lifted Grant beside her, I looked back down Hall C and saw the cracked keeper door still open by 1 inch. From somewhere inside the empty service room, something shifted in the ventilation draft. Tap, just once. Probably metal cooling. Probably. By sunrise, the zoo looked almost normal. That was the cruel part. Rainwater silvered the paths. The benches dripped. A groundskeeper's cart rolled past the closed admissions gate with a bag of mulch strapped to the back. Somewhere in the distance, birds started up like nothing had happened under the concrete corridors while the city slept. I watched all of it through the back windows of an ambulance with my left arm taped to my chest. My shoulder had dislocated when I hit the yellow rail. The ER doctor later told me I was lucky it went back and clean. Lucky. People used that word a lot that morning, usually while standing beside someone who looked anything. But Lena rode out first. She was conscious when they loaded her, which somehow made it harder to look at. Her face had gone gray, but she kept giving instructions from the stretcher, snapping at a young officer not to step past the secondary barrier, and telling a keeper named Rob to check the hydraulic bypass log before anyone touched the transfer controls. Lena, Dr. Cho said, kneeling beside her, stop managing the zoo for 10 minutes. Lena blinked slowly. No, Dr. Cho almost smiled. Almost. The tourniquet saved her leg, or at least gave the surgeons a chance. The swipe hadn't cut her femoral artery clean through, but it had torn enough muscle that the paramedic's face changed when he saw it. Lena saw his face and said, "Don't make that expression at me. I'm not a child." The paramedic, to his credit, said, "Yes, ma'am," and worked faster. Grant left next. They cut covered his lower body with blankets, but not before I saw the splint cage around his leg. He was awake in pieces, drifting up and down through shock. Every time he surfaced, he asked for Tyler. Every time, Dr. Cho told him, "He's alive. Don't talk." Tyler heard him once from the other ambulance. "I'm here," Tyler shouted, voice cracking. "Grant, I'm here." Grant tried to turn his head. The medic pushed him gently back. That was all the reunion they got. Marty came out of the security building after the police took his first statement. His beard looked damp, though he hadn't been outside long. Walked over to my ambulance, leaned one hand on the door frame, and looked at my sling. "Shoulder, yeah, palm, stitches." He nodded like I'd given him a weather report. Then he said, "You did good." I waited for a joke, some old guard correction, something like, "For a rookie." He didn't add anything, so I just nodded back. The police interviewed me at Brigham and Women's after the X-rays, while I was still wearing a hospital gown and trying not to throw up from pain medication. 2 detectives sat near the curtain with notebooks balanced on their knees. They weren't cruel. They were tired. They had the particular patience of people who knew the truth would be stupid long before it was evil. Yes, Tyler and Grant had cut through the staff fence near Blue Hill Avenue. Yes, the van belonged to Grant's cousin. Yes, they had brought cameras, lights, a portable speaker, and bolt cutters. No, they were not animal rights activists. No, there was no evidence they meant to harm the gorillas. They meant to scare themselves for views. That was all. The footage from Grant's camera survived in fragments because the memory card cracked but didn't fully break. The detectives showed me only one still image. I wish they hadn't. Grant grinning beside the gorilla transfer controls, one thumb up, wearing a headlamp. Behind him, Tyler looked nervous and kept glancing over his shoulder. The caption they had planned for the video was written on a note in Grant's phone. "Overnight in the most dangerous zoo enclosure in Boston." One of the detectives asked me about the knocking. I told him what happened. He wrote it down without looking surprised. "What do you think it was?" he asked. I looked at my bandaged palm. "Somebody trying to get us to open a door." Which somebody? I don't know. That was the truth. The official explanation came 3 days later through an internal memo nobody was supposed to forward, which meant everyone had it by lunch. The first knocking had likely been Grant. Not from inside the gorilla den, exactly, but from the keeper's side transfer vestibule after the door jammed behind him. He had used the flat side of a metal feed scoop to knock on the interior service door, trying to get Tyler's attention without shouting. Audio carried strangely through the walls and pipes, making it sound closer to the security office than it was. The van was real. The break-in was real. The gorilla was real. The rules were real too, though less mysterious than they looked at first. Years of incidents, near misses, and animal behavior quirks condensed into warnings short enough for frightened night staff to remember. Don't knock back, because primates respond to rhythm. Don't use the PA, because sudden disembodied voices can agitate animals. Don't approach doors alone, because humans, not animals, are usually the ones who make stupid situations worse. Marty said the rules were written that way because nobody read polite paragraphs during emergencies. He was right. Franklin Park Zoo stayed closed to the public for 2 days. The press release called it an overnight security breach involving unauthorized entry into a restricted animal care area. That phrase did a lot of work. There were local news vans outside the gate by noon. Reporters talked about questions surrounding zoo safety and viral trespass culture, and a critically injured young man. Nobody showed Grant's full name at first because his family asked for privacy. Tyler's name came out when the charges were filed: breaking and entering, trespassing, reckless endangerment, interference with animal operations. A few other charges I don't remember because by then I was home in my sister's spare room, half asleep on muscle relaxers, watching the coverage with the sound off. My sister, Erin, stood in the doorway holding a mug of tea. Erin Markham, 35, female, had a schoolteacher's ability to look worried and angry at the same time. She had let me live with her after the divorce without making me say thank you too often. That morning, she had driven me home from the hospital and pretended not to notice when I struggled to buckle my seatbelt with one hand. "You quitting?" she asked. I watched silent footage of the zoo entrance. "I don't know. That's not no." "No," she nodded, unhappy but unsurprised. "You always pick jobs with uniforms when your life falls apart." I almost argued, then didn't. The silverback survived. His name was Keto. I learned that from Dr. Cho, who called me the following week because Lena wanted to know whether my shoulder was still attached. Keto had abrasions on his knuckles, 2 cracked nails, and stress-related dehydration. The darts had not injured him beyond bruising. He recovered in a quiet holding area away from the damaged gates, monitored around the clock by keepers who spoke softly and moved slowly. He didn't understand any of it, Dr. Cho said. I was sitting on Erin's back steps with my arm in a sling, listening to kids ride bikes somewhere down the block. "I know. No, I mean it," she said. "People are going to make him the monster in this story. He was. I know." She was quiet for a moment. "Grant's alive," she said. I closed my eyes. His leg was gone below the knee. Lena kept hers after 2 surgeries, though she wouldn't be walking without assistance for a long time. When I visited her at the rehab hospital, she had a stack of zoo incident reports on the rolling table beside her bed, and a physical therapist outside who looked like he'd lost 3 arguments before noon. Lena pointed at my sling. Still milking that, I pointed at her leg brace. Still managing the zoo from bed. Yes, we sat there for a while without talking. Eventually she said, "You didn't freeze at the wheel." I froze before, but not when it mattered. I looked at the window. There was a parking lot outside, ordinary and bright, with a woman loading groceries into a minivan. It all mattered. Lena accepted that. She didn't try to turn it into a lesson. That was why I liked her. Marty retired 2 months later. He claimed it had been planned for years. Nobody believed him, but nobody challenged him either. On his last night, he left the black 3-ring binder in the security office and taped a new note above the primate monitor. Not red duct tape this time. Blue painter's tape. When in doubt, don't make the story more interesting. I laughed when I saw it, then stopped because the sound came out wrong. I stayed on nights. Not forever, I told myself. Just until Lena came back. Just until the investigation ended. Just until I could walk Hall C without counting exits. The zoo returned to normal in the way places do after something bad. New locks, new cameras, new policies, new staff training, old stains painted over. The cracked keeper door was replaced. The transfer controls got hard covers, requiring 2 keys. The fence line near Blue Hill Avenue gained motion sensors. and better lighting. The red rule stayed: do not answer if they knock from inside. Nobody suggested taking it down. The first time I worked alone again, I brought my coffee from home and sat in the office while the monitors washed the desk in gray light. The primates slept. Rain tapped the window. The heater rattled. At 1:12 a.m., a pipe ticked in the wall. Just once. I stopped breathing for a second, then made myself log it as building noise. That became the shape of my life for a while. Ordinary sounds with teeth under them. A cartwheel squeaking in an empty hall. A keeper door settling in its frame. The wet slap of a mop dropped too hard in a bucket. Explanations existed. Usually. 3 months after the incident, I found the blue nitrile glove while doing a supply check in the veterinary staging room. Not the same glove, probably. Same brand, same size. It had fallen behind a cabinet and dried into a curled shape like a small pale hand. I picked it up with a trash grabber. Then I stood there longer than I needed to, listening. From behind the new reinforced door to Hall C came the low rush of ventilation. No knocking, no tapping, just air moving through a building full of sleeping animals and rules written by people who had learned them the hard way. I threw the glove away. Then I checked the lock twice. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going. Welcome to Mia Horror Stories. To make it easier on your eyes, this video plays against a black screen, so you can close your eyes, get comfortable, and let the story take over. But don't relax too much, the ending might just catch you off guard. Stay with me until the very last word. I'll keep this as the introduction only, grounded, human, no reveal of the larger conflict yet, and ending on a choice that pulls them closer. Thought for a couple of seconds introduction. The first thing wrong with the train was the apology, not the delay itself. In New York, the subway could stop between stations for a pigeon, a signal problem, a man yelling at a pillar, or no reason that would ever make it to the overhead speakers. But that night on the southbound R, the conductor came on after we'd already been sitting under 49th Street for 5 minutes and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for acknowledging the delay." Then the speaker clicked off. I was standing by the doors with one hand looped through the pole and the other around a paper cup of bodega coffee that had gone lukewarm and bitter. My name is Mara Voss, 31, female, born in Queens, currently living in a 4th-floor walk-up in Sunset Park that smelled like garlic, wet coats, and the old radiator paint every winter. I worked as a route operations analyst for the MTA, which sounded more important than it was. Mostly I read delay reports, passenger complaints, incident logs, and maintenance notes, until the city became a spreadsheet with chewing gum under it. That night, I was only trying to get home. The R train lights hummed above us, too bright in patches and too dim in others, leaving everybody's faces looking a little unfinished. Someone's takeout had leaked garlic oil onto the floor near the priority seats. A kid in a puffy Knicks jacket was playing a racing game without headphones, the little engine whine rising and falling every time his thumb slipped. The car rocked once, gently, though we weren't moving. Across from me, Jonah Pike, 29, male, leaned against the door with his backpack hanging off one shoulder and his bike helmet clipped to the strap. Jonah worked nights doing IT support for a hospital network in Midtown, and he had the permanent, exhausted patience of a man who spent his shift asking doctors if they had tried restarting the computer. He was my neighbor, sort of. Same building, different floor. We didn't plan to commute together, but when your routines overlap long enough, a person becomes part of the furniture of your life. He looked up at the speaker grill. Did he say sorry for acknowledging the delay? I heard it too, I said. Jonah smiled like he wanted to make a joke and couldn't quite find one. That's new. Maybe he meant announcing. Maybe the train is in therapy. A few people glanced around, doing that subway thing where everyone confirms everyone else noticed something without committing to a shared reality. A woman in a gray wool coat adjusted her scarf and stared harder at her phone. A man with paint on his boots muttered, "Every damn night," though not like he'd heard the same thing we had. I checked the transit app. No service alert. No red banner. Just the little train icon sitting confidently on its route, pretending to be in motion. That bothered me more than the announcement. My job had made me suspicious of missing information. I didn't believe in mysteries. I believed in skipped form fields, bad timestamps, poorly trained new hires, and old infrastructure making liars out of everybody. Still, I had a private fear I hated admitting even to myself. I was terrified of noticing the thing everyone else missed. Not because it made me special, because if I noticed it, I became responsible. Jonah nudged my elbow. "You doing the face?" "What face?" "Work face." Like the train personally filed something wrong. It did. The speaker popped again. A brief breath of static filled the car. "Please remain patient," the conductor said. "We are being held due to passenger conditions ahead." A baby started fussing 2 benches down. The mother bounced him gently, whispering in Polish, her voice soft and dry from a long day. Somewhere in the next car, somebody laughed once, sharp and nervous. Passenger conditions ahead. That was a phrase people used when they didn't want to say sick passenger, police activity, person struck, disorderly customer. It could mean almost anything human. The lights blinked. Just once. When they came back steady, a man was standing in front of the end door between cars. He hadn't appeared out of nowhere. That's not what I mean. He must have come from the next car during the blink, stepping through the connecting door while everyone was distracted. It was explainable. He was maybe late 50s, male, white, with a sunken face and a navy pea coat that looked too warm for April. His hair was wet or greasy, combed flat to his scalp. Held a folded newspaper in both hands, not reading it, just gripping it at his chest like a church program. His shoes were polished black, but one lace had snapped and dragged beside his foot. He stared at the advertisements above our heads, not at us, never at us. The ad was for a teeth whitening clinic in Herald Square. A smiling woman held a shade guide beside her mouth. The man stared at it with his jaw slack, breathing through parted lips. Jonah whispered, "That guy ride with us from Queens." "I don't know. You notice him before?" "No." The train gave a heavy metallic sigh, brakes releasing. The kids' phone game cut through the car with a triumphant chime. We started moving. People relaxed instantly, almost embarrassingly. Shoulders lowered. Phones came back up. The mother kissed the baby's hat. The man in the pea coat didn't shift with the motion. He kept staring at the ad as if the train's movement had nothing to do with him. At 45th Street, the doors opened to an empty platform. That was wrong too, but lightly wrong. Late enough for thin crowds, not late enough for none. The tiles looked yellow under the fluorescent lights. A crushed coffee cup rolled along the edge in the wind pushed by our arrival. The platform speakers made a garbled announcement that dissolved into crackle. No one got on. The doors chimed. As they began closing, the man in the peacoat spoke. "Excuse me," he said. It was a normal voice. Hoarse, polite, tired. Everyone near him went still. He didn't look at anyone. He spoke toward the ad. "Does this train stop at Rector Street?" The R did not stop at Rector Street. The one did. Everyone knew that, or could look it up in 3 seconds. The woman in the gray coat opened her mouth. Before she could answer, a hand clamped down on her wrist. It belonged to an older transit worker sitting beside her. A broad black man in a dark MTA jacket with a knit cap pulled low. His name, Patch, read Collins. Earl Collins, 62 male, as I would learn properly a few minutes later. At that moment, he was just a man with tired eyes and a grip firm enough to stop a stranger from being polite. The woman jerked, offended. "Hey," Collins didn't look at her. He looked down at the floor. "Don't," he said. The doors shut. The train moved. The man in the peacoat waited. His fingers tightened around the newspaper until the fold creased deeper. Then he asked again, same tone, same volume. "Excuse me, does this train stop at Rector Street?" Nobody answered. Now the car had that careful subway quiet, not silence, never silence. Metal screaming around curves, plastic bags rustling. The engine whine from the kid's game, lower now because his mother had finally hissed at him to turn it down. A cough, a sniff, the soft thump of wheels over rail joints counting time under our feet. Jonah looked at me. His eyes asked the thing his mouth didn't. I shook my head once. I didn't know why. At 36th Street, the man stepped off. He walked onto the platform without turning his head. The doors closed behind him. For half a second, through the scratched window, I saw him still facing the train, newspaper at his chest, mouth moving. Then we were in the tunnel again. The woman in the gray coat rounded on Collins. "What the hell was that?" Collins let go of her wrist. "Sorry, you grabbed me." I said sorry. "You can't just grab people." He nodded slowly, like she was right but not relevant. You were about to answer him. So, Collins finally lifted his face. His eyes were red-veined and damp, the eyes of someone near the end of a very long shift. "So don't." That was when my work badge, clipped stupidly to my coat because I'd forgotten to tuck it away, swung forward as the train rocked. Collins saw it. His expression changed. Not recognition, assessment. "You ops?" he asked. I touched the badge. Analyst. Route. Broadway local mostly. Some Fourth Ave. Jonah gave me a look. Mara, I knew that look. It meant, please don't become involved in the weird train thing. But Collins was already reaching into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, soft at the creases, and held it between 2 fingers. "Then you tell me if this is official," he said. I didn't take it right away. The woman in the gray coat stood, muttering something about lunatics, and moved to the far end of the car. The mother with the baby watched us openly now. The painter with the boots pretended not to. Jonah said, low, "Maybe we don't touch random subway paper." Collins barked a tiny laugh. No humor in it. Best advice I heard all night. But he kept holding it out. I took it. The paper was a photocopy of a photocopy, the text slightly blurred. The MTA logo at the top stretched sideways like someone had dragged the file into a document without locking the proportions. Under it, in bold all caps, it read, Broadway 4th Avenue Night Operations Passenger NON Engagement List. Do not acknowledge below that were descriptions. Not names, descriptions. Man, navy pea coat, FOLDED newspaper, ASKS about Rector Street. Woman, red umbrella, BOARDS 8T59TH, asks whether child has exited. Teen male, green backpack, counts passengers allowed. Older female, hospital bracelet, requests time from riders. Two men in matching work GLOVES, do not separate if seen together. There were more, but my eyes stuck on the first line. Jonah read over my shoulder. That's not funny. It's not mine, Collins said. I flipped the page. There was a handwritten note on the back in blue pen. Updated list from Stillwell incident. Do not distribute digitally. Printed copies only. If challenged, deny knowledge. My mouth went dry, not from fear exactly, but from the sudden administrative shape of it. The formatting, the fake logo, the careful wording, the fact that someone had made terror look like a memo. This isn't official, I said. Collins watched me too closely. You sure? Yes, because he was on the list. I looked toward the dark window where my reflection floated over tunnel lights. That doesn't make it official. No, Collins said. Makes it useful. Jonah shifted beside me. Where did you get that? Collins rubbed his thumb along the seam of his jacket. Break room at 95th. Taped under the schedule board. I thought it was somebody's idea of a joke until 3 weeks ago. What happened 3 weeks ago? I asked. He didn't answer quickly. The train slowed into 25th Street. The platform had people on it this time. A delivery cyclist with a thermal bag, 2 teenagers sharing earbuds, a woman in scrubs eating chips from a vending machine-size packet. Normal life, blue-white lights, damp concrete, rats clicking somewhere under the edge. Collins stood. This is my stop, he said. You're just leaving after handing me this. He looked genuinely tired then. Not dramatic, not mysterious. Just a man with bad knees and too many nights behind him. I'm off shift, he said, and you got the badge. That doesn't mean I can do anything. Maybe not, he pointed at the paper. But somebody put that where employees would find it. Somebody wanted us to follow it without asking who wrote it. The doors opened. Jonah said, Mara, give it back. I should have. That was the clean choice. Hand the paper back to the exhausted transit worker. Get off at 36th or Atlantic. File a weird mental note. Make tea. Sleep badly. Maybe mention it to my supervisor in the morning in a tone that made it sound silly. Instead, I kept holding it. Collins stepped onto the platform. Before the doors closed, he turned back. If you see the woman with the red umbrella, he said, don't look at the umbrella. People always look at the umbrella. The doors slid shut between us. Jonah stared at me. I stared at the paper. The train pulled away, and in the tunnel glass behind my reflection, the car looked crowded with ordinary strangers, all of them tired, all of them going home, all of them suddenly possible entries on a list I wasn't supposed to have. At the next station, we would have to choose, get off and pretend this was someone else's problem, or stay on long enough to see whether the second description was real. The intercom clicked. No announcement came through. Only breathing. The breathing over the intercom lasted just long enough for people to start pretending they didn't hear it. Then the speaker snapped off with a dry pop. Nobody moved for maybe 2 seconds. The train rattled under us, steel grinding through a curve somewhere beneath Sunset Park. and everybody suddenly found urgent reasons to stare at their shoes, phones, ad panels, reflections. The woman with the baby pressed the child's head into her shoulder. Jonah shifted beside me, uncomfortable in that very specific New Yorker way where discomfort becomes anger before it becomes fear. "Okay," he muttered. "Now we get off." I folded the paper once and slid it into my coat pocket. Probably a crossed radio feed. "Mara, what? You don't believe that?" I didn't answer because I didn't know if I did. The train slowed into Atlantic Avenue Barclays. Big station. Bright station. Multiple transfers. Tiled walls sweating old moisture under the fluorescent lights. Usually loud enough to swallow your thoughts. The platform outside was crowded even this late, people coming off the D and N trains in waves, footsteps clapping across concrete, somebody dragging a rolling suitcase with one broken wheel. The doors opened. Warm air rolled into the car carrying pretzel salt, damp clothes, stale beer. Jonah stepped toward the platform immediately. "Come on." I stayed where I was. He looked back at me. "Seriously, I just want to check one thing." "Why?" "Because the list existed. Because the man in the pea coat had been real. Because some exhausted transit worker had looked me in the eye like he was handing off a loaded weapon. Mostly, though, because of the flaw I hated about myself. Once something stopped making sense, I couldn't leave it alone. My father used to call it digging for loose teeth. Even as a kid, I would worry problems until they bled. "There's probably an explanation," I said. That sentence usually comes before a terrible decision. Passengers pushed around us. Someone bumped my shoulder hard enough to slosh coffee onto my hand. The train gave its warning chime. Jonah swore quietly. "Mara." Then we both heard it, a voice from farther down the platform. "Excuse me," a woman called. "Has anyone seen my son?" My stomach tightened before my brain caught up. Jonah saw it happen on my face. "What?" I pulled the folded paper from my pocket too fast, nearly dropping it. Second line. Woman, red umbrella, BOARDS AT59TH, asks whether child has exited. A woman stepped through the crowd toward our car, holding a closed red umbrella against her shoulder like a cane. Not bright red, darker. Wine-colored fabric with rainwater still clinging to it. She was maybe 45, female, Hispanic, wearing hospital scrubs under a beige coat. One sneaker was untied. Her eyes moved rapidly over the passengers nearest the door without really landing on anyone. "Sorry," she said breathlessly. "Little boy, blue jacket, maybe 7. He got on the wrong train." The chime sounded again. People hesitated. Human instinct. Missing child overrides almost everything. An older man near the door pointed down the platform. "You should ask station." Before he finished, Jonah grabbed my sleeve hard. "Don't," he whispered. Not to me, to the man. The older man stopped talking, confused by his own interruption. The woman with the umbrella looked directly at him for the first time. There was nothing monstrous about her face, just exhaustion. Mascara smudged under her eyes, damp curls sticking to her forehead. But there was something wrong in the rhythm of her panic, too measured, like somebody imitating urgency from memory. "Please," she said. "Did you see him?" The train doors started closing. At the last second, she stepped inside our car. Umbrella brushed the metal doorframe with a squeal of wet fabric. Jonah inhaled sharply beside me. The doors sealed shut. The train moved. For a while, nobody spoke. The woman stayed near the center pole, scanning faces with quick, practiced glances. She held the umbrella carefully upright between her shoes. I remembered Colin saying, "Don't look at the umbrella." People always look at the umbrella. Naturally, I looked at it immediately, not directly at first. Little stolen glances. Cheap umbrella. Wooden curved handle. Drugstore quality. One metal rib bent inward slightly near the tip. There was dried brown residue near the strap closure. Rust, I thought automatically. Probably rust. Jonah leaned close enough that his beard brushed my ear. "Next stop, we leave. You think she's on the list by coincidence. I think someone's messing with people." Then, how did they know? Know what? I looked toward the woman. She was now asking a teenager in headphones if he'd seen her son. He shook his head quickly without removing the headphones. How did they know she'd say exactly that? Jonah opened his mouth, shut it again. The woman moved farther into the car. Each time she spoke to somebody, the conversation went slightly wrong. Tiny glitches in normal human exchange. A businessman offered to call station security, and she ignored the offer completely, repeating the same question with only a few changed words. A tourist couple tried asking what the child looked like, and she answered 3 beats too late, as if hearing them through a wall. Blue jacket, 7 years old, brown hair, same order every time. The train rocked through the tunnel, screeching wheels, flashing maintenance lights outside the windows. Then the overhead lights flickered once. In that brief dip of brightness, the woman's umbrella tipped sideways against her leg. A dark, wet smear marked the fabric near the tip. Not rust, something thicker. Jonah saw me notice it. "Stop staring," he hissed. "She's bleeding, or somebody else is." That landed between us hard. The car suddenly smelled metallic beneath the subway odors, pennies and wet concrete. The woman took a seat near the middle doors and rested the umbrella across her knees. She seemed calmer now, breathing slower. That frightened me more than the panic. I pulled out my phone and opened the employee incident portal. No signal underground. The loading wheel spun uselessly. Jonah watched me. "You're reporting this?" "I don't know." "What exactly would you even say?" "Good question." Suspicious woman with umbrella matching fake list behaves oddly on train. Even hearing it in my head sounded ridiculous. The train entered DeKalb Avenue slower than normal. The platform outside was packed shoulder to shoulder. Delays backing up lines. Commuters pressing toward the yellow strip with dead-eyed impatience. The speaker overhead crackled unintelligibly. Then a different sound rolled across the station. A scream, not horror movie loud, human loud, sharp, startled, cut short. Everybody in our car turned toward the platform windows instinctively. 2 cops were pushing through the crowd near the far staircase. People backed away in messy ripples. Someone dropped a shopping bag, oranges bouncing across the platform tiles. I caught flashes only. A body on the ground. Blue jacket, child-sized. The woman with the umbrella stood so quickly the train lurched her sideways. "My son," she said. For the first time, her voice sounded genuinely raw. The doors opened. Passengers immediately surged away from the doorway instead of toward it. That told me everything about the mood on the platform. Something bad enough that people wanted distance. The woman stepped off the train, then stopped. She turned back toward our car slowly, eyes moving across faces again. "Did he get off here?" she asked. Nobody answered. Even the tourists looked away now. Jonah grabbed my arm. "We are absolutely leaving." But I stayed frozen. The child on the platform was moving, not dead. one cop kneeling beside him while the other shouted into a radio. Blood ran from somewhere near the kid's scalp, dark against the tile. The woman with the umbrella stared, not rushing to him, not calling his name, just staring. Then she walked away in the opposite direction, straight toward the station exit. A transit employee near the stairs yelled after her, "Ma'am, ma'am." She disappeared into the crowd. The doors closed again. The train pulled out. Jonah swore under his breath. Nope, nope, we should have gotten off. I watched the platform slide away behind us. The injured boy, the cops, the commuters filming on their phones already. He wasn't hers, I said quietly. You don't know that. She never asked what station he got off at. She never described his face. She never even said his name. Jonah rubbed both hands over his face. Mara, listen to yourself. But he sounded shaken too. The car had changed after that. People who'd ignored each other now watched each other openly. The businessman moved to another seat. The teenager removed one earbud completely. Every time the train slowed, heads lifted toward the windows. Fear spreads socially before it spreads logically. My phone buzzed suddenly with restored signal as we neared another station. A flood of notifications appeared. One from work. Service disruption. Southbound R delays due to track level injury incident at DK Biave. Track level injury. Not child struck. Not assault. Careful wording again. Then another notification arrived from an unknown number. No caller ID, just a text. You should not have taken the paper. I stared at it. Jonah saw my face immediately. What? I turned the screen toward him. His expression flattened. Okay, that's not funny anymore. A second message came before either of us spoke. Get off AT53 RD. Last safe stop. I looked up automatically at the route map above the doors. 53rd Street was 3 stations away. Probably Collins, Jonah said too quickly. No, you don't know that. He didn't have my number. The typing bubble appeared again. Do not speak to the green backpack. Both of us looked down the car at the same moment. Near the end door stood a teenage, who I could have sworn had not been there 30 seconds earlier. 16, maybe 17. Male, thin, green backpack slung over both shoulders. His lips moved quietly. 23, 24, 25, counting. The businessman noticed him too. You okay, kid? He asked. The teenager looked up. 26. I stood so fast my knee cracked against the pole. Don't, I snapped, too loud. Half the car looked at me. The businessman frowned. Excuse me. I didn't know how to explain myself without sounding insane. The teenager smiled faintly. 27. Jonah grabbed my sleeve again, harder this time. Sit down. He's on the list. You cannot keep saying that like it means something. But Jonah's voice had started thinning at the edges. The businessman turned back toward the kid anyway. You lost or something? The teenager tilted his head. 28. Then the train lights went out completely. Not flicker. Gone. The car plunged into thick mechanical darkness, broken only by phone screens and the weak emergency strips near the floor. Gasps rippled instantly through the passengers. Somebody cursed. The baby started screaming. Brakes slammed hard enough to throw several people sideways. Metal shrieked around us. My shoulder hit the pole. Jonah crashed into the seat edge beside me with a grunt. The train stopped dead between stations. For 1 second, all you could hear was breathing, electronics buzzing faintly, and somewhere underneath us, far below the floor, the groan of another train moving through a different tunnel. Then came the smell. Smoke, thin at first, electrical. woman shouted from the next car, "Fire! I smell fire." Panic moved faster than thought after that. People surged toward the doors. Someone pounded the emergency intercom. The businessman shoved past two passengers trying to reach the conductor cab. The baby screamed harder. A man at the far end started coughing violently. Emergency lights painted everybody in sick red strips. And through all of it, steady and calm, the teenager with the green backpack kept counting. 31. Jonah grabbed my wrist. "Mara," he said, voice tight now, "we need to move." The intercom crackled alive. Not the conductor this time. A different voice. Low, male, close to the microphone. "Do not exit the train," it said. "There are people on the tracks." Then screaming erupted in the next car. Loud enough this time that nobody could pretend it was normal anymore. The screaming in the next car stopped too suddenly. Not faded. Stopped. 1 second it was high and chaotic, multiple voices, overlapping panic, somebody shouting for help. And the next, there was only the tunnel hum under us and the dry electric crackle from the emergency lights. Everybody in our car froze. Then people started moving all at once. A man in a Yankees cap shoved past me toward the end doors connecting to the next car. Someone else pulled the emergency handle near the center doors, yanking hard enough to snap the plastic cover. Nothing happened. The doors stayed sealed. Smoke thickened near the ceiling in pale gray ribbons. "Back up," somebody yelled. The businessman who'd spoken to the teenager earlier was coughing hard now, his tie loosened halfway down his chest. "We need out of this car." Jonah still had my wrist. His grip hurt. "Mara," I looked at him. His face had gone pale under the emergency lights, freckles standing out sharply against his skin. Sweat darkened the collar of his jacket. "We moved toward the conductor," he said. "Now." That was logical. Front of the train. "Staff, radios, procedures," I nodded. The teenage boy with the green backpack stood near the end doors, still counting under his breath. 34, 35. Nobody wanted to pass him, which was ridiculous. He was a skinny kid. Maybe a runaway. Maybe mentally ill. Maybe part of some coordinated prank that had spiraled into real panic once the train failed. There were explanations, but the car naturally bent around him anyway, passengers pressing themselves into the seats to keep distance. The emergency strips cast his face upward in red light, making his eyes look hollowed out. Jonah pulled me toward the opposite end of the car instead. We pushed through bodies and backpacks and the thickening heat. The subway car suddenly felt much smaller than it had 10 minutes ago. Every movement involved brushing strangers, wet sleeves, sharp elbows, hair against your cheek. A woman near the center doors was crying quietly into her phone. "Mom, I'm underground. I don't know where, no signal." Her screen showed call failed. At the far end, the inter-car door window had fogged slightly from heat and breath. Through the glass, I could see shapes moving in the next car. Too fast. Then a transit employee stumbled through the connecting door. Young guy, early 20s, male, orange reflective vest, half unzipped over an MTA hoodie. Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow into his eyelashes. He nearly fell entering our car. Passengers recoiled instinctively. "Move," he shouted hoarsely. "Everybody move away from the back car." "What happened?" someone yelled. The employee slammed the connecting door shut behind him and fumbled at the emergency latch with shaking hands. "There's a guy back there with a knife." The whole car inhaled together. Not not screaming this time. Worse, that stunned animal silence before panic fully catches up. Transit worker leaned against the door, breathing hard. He came through after the lights went out, started waving it around, said nobody was allowed to leave. Jesus Christ, Jonah muttered. Did he stab somebody? The businessman asked. The worker nodded once. Where's transit police? Another passenger snapped. We already called it in. You called it in to who? We're underground. The worker ignored that. Blood dripped from his chin onto his vest. Then he noticed the teenager with the green backpack. The counting. The worker's expression changed instantly. 38. You, the worker said softly. The teenager smiled faintly. Every muscle in the transit worker's body tightened. Don't talk to him, he whispered. The words hit me harder than they should have, because they came from someone who clearly had never seen the list. The businessman heard it too. What the hell does that mean? But the worker had already turned away, pulling a radio from his belt. Only static answered. Jonah and I exchanged a look. That was the first failed attempt, reaching the conductor. The path forward now meant passing through a car with an armed man inside. Nobody moved toward it anymore. Instead, the entire car compressed inward, human bodies unconsciously clustering away from the threat behind the sealed connector door. Then something slammed against the other side of the glass. People screamed. A bloody handprint streaked down the window. A woman's voice cried, "Please." Another impact cut her off. The businessman backed away so fast he collided with the seats. Someone started praying softly in Spanish near the center pole. The transit worker kept fumbling with his radio. Control, this is train 643 southbound. Emergency situation. Possible assault in rear car between DeKalb and Union. Static swallowed the rest. The smell of electrical smoke deepened. I knew that smell from old maintenance yards. Overheated wiring. Burnt insulation. Not immediate fire maybe, but bad enough. We can't stay stopped, I said. The transit worker looked at me sharply. UMTA, I showed him my badge. Then you know these emergency lights won't last forever. He swallowed hard. Yeah, what's your name? Louis Ortega, track maintenance. Louis Ortega, 24, male. Young enough that the stubble on his cheeks still grew unevenly. Jonah pointed upward. Can the conductor move the train? If power's dead, no. Then what? Louis hesitated. That hesitation scared me more than the knife. There's an emergency walkway, he said finally. Left side of the tunnel. Leads north toward the cross passage. Toward Union Street, I asked. Yeah, about 600 feet maybe. Subway geography started assembling itself in my head automatically. We were between DeKalb and Union, deep under 4th Avenue. Narrow side walkway beside active tracks. Cross passage connecting service access points. Evacuation route. If we reach the cross passage, I said, we can get to the maintenance stairwell. Louis nodded once. But we'd have to leave the train, Jonah said. Nobody liked saying that aloud. Leaving a stalled subway car in a dark tunnel goes against instinct, against years of announcements and warnings and news stories about third rails. The businessman overheard us immediately. No way. We can't stay here either, I said. As if to answer me, the train lights dimmed lower. Red emergency strips flickering now. Somebody near the rear doors shouted, "He's trying to get through." The connector door shook violently. Metal shrieked. The woman beside me whimpered. Then came a terrible scraping sound across the glass. For one awful second, I thought it was the knife. Then the transit worker cursed in relief. Flashlight. The armed man in the next car was dragging a flashlight beam across the window, not a blade. The scraping noise came from the flashlight body grinding the metal frame. Misdirection. Human brains filling darkness with worse things. Still terrifying. Still real. The beam illuminated brief, chaotic images through the small glass pane. Overturned bags, passengers crouched low, one man clutching his shoulder, while another pressed a jacket against the wound. And near the far end of that car stood a tall figure in dark clothes, holding something long and metallic. Knife, after all. The flashlight beam vanished. The connector door rattled again. Lewis made the decision for everyone. We evacuate. Instant arguments erupted. No, there's live tracks. What if another train comes? I'm not walking through a tunnel. Jonah leaned toward me. Tell them. What? Your MTA. They'll listen to you. That private fear of responsibility came roaring back. I didn't want this. Didn't want 30 strangers looking at me like I knew what to do because I had a plastic badge and spreadsheets on my work laptop. But they were already looking. The businessman first, then the crying woman, then others. Waiting, tunnel air pressed hot against my face. The connector door slammed again. 41, the teenager whispered behind us. I swallowed. If we stay, I said carefully. Smoke gets worse, battery backup dies, and we're trapped between cars with an armed person behind us. The evacuation walkway is standard procedure if power stays out. Standard, the businessman snapped. This is standard to you. No, I said, but the walkway is real. A small thing shifted then. Not trust exactly. Momentum. Lewis moved to the side doors and unlocked the emergency release with a maintenance key from his belt. Cold tunnel air poured in immediately through the narrow gap. Blackness outside. Concrete wall inches away on the right side. Open track trench to the left. The smell hit next. Oil, wet stone, brake dust, and the deep mineral smell of underground water. People hesitated at the threshold. The tunnel always looks wrong from inside a train. Too cramped. Too industrial. Like seeing the guts behind scenery. Lewis climbed down first onto the narrow walkway. Single file, he called. Stay against the wall. Don't touch the third rail. Someone asked shakily, which one's the third rail? The one that can kill you. Not reassuring. Jonah went before me, dropping awkwardly onto the concrete with a grunt. I followed carefully, shoes slipping slightly on damp grit. The tunnel ceiling felt lower outside the train, compressed. Emergency lights from the car painted everything bloody red behind us. Passengers climbed down one by one, crying, cursing, helping each other. The teenager with the green backpack remained inside, watching. 42. Leave him, Jonah said quietly when he saw me looking. The businessman slipped climbing down and smashed his shin against the metal edge hard enough to cry out. Lewis and Jonah caught him before he pitched toward the tracks. Physical panic was setting in now. Shaking hands, poor balance, ragged breathing. Tunnel evacuations sound louder in movies than in real life. Mostly, it was shoes scraping concrete and people breathing too fast. We started north toward Union Street. Train on our right. Concrete wall on our left now after the tunnel curve shifted. The walkway narrowed unpredictably where maintenance boxes jutted from the wall. Water dripped steadily somewhere ahead. I kept glancing back. Bad idea. The stalled train stretched behind us like a red-lit animal carcass in the dark. Then movement appeared inside one of the windows. A face, not the armed man, the woman with the red umbrella. She stood inside the train, staring out through the glass as we moved away. "How the hell is she still on there?" Jonah whispered. I stopped walking before I realized I had. She raised one hand slowly to the window, not waving, pointing at us. Then the tunnel lights snapped back on. Full fluorescent power exploded overhead. Everyone flinched. The train roared alive behind us with a metallic shudder. "Oh my God," someone shouted. The cars lurched forward, straight toward us. People screamed and flattened against the tunnel wall instinctively. Lewis shouted, "Run!" Panic detonated completely then. The train wasn't supposed to move, not while passengers were on the walkway. The headlights flooded the tunnel white behind us. Wind blasted forward, carrying hot electrical stink and dust. I ran. Everybody ran. Concrete tore at my palms when I slammed into the wall to avoid slipping. Jonah grabbed the back of my coat and yanked me upright again. The businessman limped badly, nearly falling every few steps. Ahead, maybe 100 feet away now, I saw the dark rectangle of the cross passage opening. Too far. The train screamed behind us, gaining speed. Then, suddenly, brakes shrieked. The entire tunnel vibrated. The train stopped again, maybe 3-car lengths short of where we'd been seconds earlier. Silence crashed down afterward, except for metal ticking as the cars settled. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed normally. Then a voice echoed through the tunnel from the stopped train, amplified faintly through the reopened intercom. Passengers are instructed to return to the train immediately, not the conductor. The same low male voice from before. Track evacuation is unauthorized. Lewis stared back at the train in disbelief. They restarted power. Jonah bent over with hands on knees, gasping for air. "Who is they?" No one answered. Then came another sound from farther ahead in the tunnel. Footsteps, multiple, echoing toward us through the cross passage darkness. Flashlights flickered against the tunnel walls. For one beautiful second, I thought rescue. Transit police maybe. Emergency response. Then I saw what the lights illuminated. 2 men walking side by side. Matching reflective work gloves. Exactly like the list. They stopped at the entrance to the cross passage, blocking it completely. One of them raised a flashlight toward us. Behind us, the train doors began opening one by one with hollow mechanical thunks. Ahead of us, the men in matching gloves stepped onto the narrow walkway. And in that moment, I understood with cold certainty that we could no longer go back to being ordinary passengers who had seen something weird on the subway. Whatever this was had crossed too many systems already. Transit staff, train control, the tunnels themselves. We were inside it now. The 2 men in matching work gloves didn't hurry. That was what made everyone stop running. They came out of the cross passage with flashlights held low, beams swinging over our shoes, the damp concrete, the bright silver edge of the 3rd rail cover. Both wore dark jackets with reflective tape, hard hats, and those heavy gray gloves with orange rubber palms. They looked like track workers if you only glanced. But Lewis glanced properly. "No," he whispered, "they're not ours." The man on the left was older, maybe 50, male, broad around the shoulders. The man on the right was younger, male, thinner, with a patchy beard visible under the hard hat strap. Neither had an ID badge clipped to their chest. Neither carried a radio. Behind us, the train doors finished opening with one last hollow clunk. Inside the cars, red emergency light spilled onto the walkway. The low voice came again from the train speakers. "Return to the train. Stay together. Do not engage unauthorized persons. Jonah made a cracked sound that was almost a laugh. Unauthorized persons. That's rich. The businessman with the bleeding shin started backing toward the train. I'm going back. No, I said. He looked at me like he hated me. You don't know anything. He was right. That was the worst part. I knew paperwork. I knew route maps. I knew incident wording and how often one department blamed another when something failed. I did not know how to stand in a subway tunnel between imposter workers and a train that had just tried to roll over us. Lewis raised both hands. We've got injured passengers. You need to identify yourselves. The older man lifted his flashlight into Lewis's face. Lewis flinched but held his ground. Maintenance directive, the older man said. Return passengers to train. His voice was flat, practiced. Which division? Lewis asked. No answer. Show badge. Younger man's hand slipped into his jacket pocket. Jonah moved before I did. He grabbed Lewis by the back of the vest and yanked him sideways, just as the younger man pulled out a collapsible baton and swung. It cracked against the tunnel wall where Lewis's head had been. Sound exploded off the concrete. People screamed. Then everything broke loose. The narrow walkway turned into a crush of bodies. Some passengers shoved toward the train. Others scrambled toward the cross passage. The older man lunged for Lewis. The younger one swung the baton again, low this time, catching the businessman across the shoulder as he tried to pass. The man dropped hard, his head bouncing once against the concrete. No one was heroic at first. We were just frightened people in a place made for machines. I grabbed Jonah's backpack strap to keep from being separated. Lewis ducked under the older man's arm and slammed him shoulder first into the train's exterior. Metal boomed. The older man grunted and shoved back, stronger than Lewis by a lot. The younger man pointed his baton at the passengers. Back on the train, a woman sobbed, "Please, please, we just want out." Back on the train. From inside the nearest car, the teenage boy with the green backpack stood framed in the doorway, counting. 48, 49, he looked delighted. Not supernatural, not possessed, just delighted in the way cruel people can be when panic becomes predictable. And that clicked something into place. The list wasn't about ghosts. It was about scripts, questions designed to make passengers respond, panic designed to sort people by instinct. The man with the newspaper, the umbrella woman, the counting boy, they weren't inexplicable. They were cues, tests, human tripwires. Jonah, I gasped. They're measuring responses. What? They need people to engage, to move where they want. The train speakers hissed. All passengers must return to the train for safe evacuation. Safe evacuation. Wrong phrase. I looked at the open doors. The woman with the red umbrella stood just inside one of them now, umbrella hanging from her wrist. The dark stain near its tip looked black under the red lights. Behind her, deeper in the car, passengers crouched with hands over their heads. And farther back, through the connecting door window, I saw the armed man, knife in hand, waiting. They're herding us back, I said. Jonah followed my look. His face changed. Lewis was losing ground. The older imposter had him pressed against the train, forearm across his throat. Lewis clawed at the man's sleeve, boots scraping uselessly on grit. I didn't think. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the paper list. The fake memo. The thing everyone wanted. I held it up. Hey, the older man looked. So did the younger one. So did the teenager in the doorway. That attention landed on me like weight. "Have it," I said, my voice shaking badly enough that the words came out uneven. "This is what you want, right?" Jonah hissed. "Mara, what are you doing?" "Improvising." The older man released enough pressure for Louis to drag in a wet breath. "Give it here," the older man said. "Let them through first." He smiled without warmth. "You're not in charge." "No," I said, "but you don't want this torn up and floating through 3 agencies by morning." That was a bluff, mostly, but the younger man hesitated. His eyes flicked to the paper. The first real fear I'd seen from any of them. The list mattered, not because it was official, because it was evidence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One message, not the paper, the back, the handwritten note. "Do not distribute digitally. If challenged, deny knowledge." My hands felt slick. I turned the paper slightly, letting the back show. "You don't know who I sent this to," I said. The older man's face tightened. Jonah understood before I did. He pulled out his phone, raised it high, and shouted, "Recording." He was no signal, maybe no storage. Maybe the camera app wasn't even open yet. But half the passengers copied him. Phones came up, screens glowed. The younger man recoiled as if light itself hurt him. "Stop filming," he shouted. That was our opening. Louis drove his knee up into the older man's thigh and shoved him backward. Jonah threw his backpack into the younger man's face. The baton swing went wild, catching Jonah across the forearm with a hard crack. Jonah yelled and dropped to one knee. I grabbed his jacket. Louis shouted, "Cross passage, move." Passengers surged forward. The younger imposter tried to block them, but panic had changed direction now. 10 people hit him at once, shoulders, elbows, bags, pure desperation. He stumbled toward the open track side, arms windmilling. Louis caught him, actually caught him. Even then, he grabbed the back of the man's jacket and hauled him away from the drop toward the rail bed. "Don't touch the rail," Louis screamed. The younger man twisted and punched Louis in the mouth. Louis went down. Hard, blood sprayed onto the concrete. The older imposter recovered and grabbed me by the coat. His glove closed around my collar and yanked me so sharply my feet skidded. My shoulder tore with a hot white flash of pain. "Paper," he said. His breath smelled like coffee and gum. Close. Too close. I shoved the list into my mouth. Not all the way, just enough. Then I bit down. He stared at me, stunned. I ripped backward, tearing the paper in half with my teeth and hands. The taste of toner and dirty fibers filled my mouth. I gagged, spit, tore again. "Jesus, Mara," Jonah shouted from the ground. The older man slapped me. Open hand, heavy glove, my ear rang. My knees buckled. For a second, the tunnel narrowed to light, concrete, and the copper taste of blood. Then the woman with the red umbrella stepped out of the train. "Enough," she said. Everyone heard her, even the imposters. She walked along the narrow strip of platform edge walkway with the calm of someone who had practiced it. The umbrella tip tapped once against concrete. Tap, tap, tap. The older man let go of me. "You were told to stay in the car," he snapped. She ignored him and looked at the teenager. "How many?" The boy swallowed. The delight was gone. 53, needed 40. My stomach turned. Passengers, counts, thresholds for what? Lawsuit leverage, extortion. Some staged security incident, insurance fraud, a sick network of employees and imposters creating controlled chaos. I didn't have time to understand it. The woman reached into her coat. Jonah shouted, "Knife," but it was. She pulled out a key ring. Transit keys. Not one. Several. Louis, bleeding from the mouth, stared at them. Where did you get those? The woman looked almost bored. Same place he got his. She pointed at Lewis's belt. Then she moved toward the maintenance door inside the cross passage. The older imposter cursed and shoved past me after her. That was when the real danger behind us finally arrived. The armed man from the rear car jumped down from the train. He was tall, male, maybe 30s, wearing a black hoodie and latex gloves under cut-off work gloves. His knife was not huge. Kitchen knife. 6 inches. Terrifying enough. He grabbed the nearest passenger, the crying woman who had tried to call her mother, and hooked an arm around her chest. Back, he shouted. Everybody stopped. The cross passage was 10 feet ahead, blocked by confusion. Train behind, knife beside us. The older imposter near the door. The umbrella woman with keys. The teenager counting under his breath again, faster now. Jonah tried to stand and nearly fell. His right forearm hung wrong, swelling already where the baton had hit. He said, teeth clenched, "Don't," because I was looking at the emergency intercom panel beside the open train door, not inside the car, the exterior service panel, a small locked box used by crew. Lewis saw my eyes go there. "No," he mumbled through blood. "Needs key." I looked at the torn paper in my hand, then at the umbrella woman's key ring. She had turned toward the maintenance door. If she opened it, they would disappear into the system. The evidence would vanish. The injured would stay injured. We would become confused passengers with unbelievable stories. My flaw had brought me here. Now responsibility had me by the throat. I ran at her, not gracefully, not bravely. I slipped on damp grit and slammed shoulder first into the older imposter instead. Pain burst down my arm. He stumbled into the umbrella woman. Her keys flew from her hand and skittered across the concrete toward the open trackside. "Keys," I shouted. Lewis crawled. The younger imposter grabbed for them too. Jonah, with one good arm, kicked the key ring away from the younger man's fingers. It slid under the edge of the walkway, stopped inches from the drop. Lewis flattened himself belly down and reached. The armed man screamed. I said back. The crying woman bit him. Hard, he howled and loosened his grip. Someone tackled him from the side. The businessman. Bad shin, bleeding head, still moving. They hit the train exterior together. The knife clattered to the walkway. For half a second, everyone stared at it, and 3 people kicked it into the track bed. It bounced once and disappeared under the train. The armed man tried to scramble after it. Lewis screamed, "Don't," too late. His hand hit the 3rd rail cover, not the rail itself, but the shock of realizing how close he was made him freeze completely. 2 passengers dragged him backward and pinned him face down. The older imposter bolted for the cross passage. The umbrella woman followed. Lewis got the keys. He threw them to me. I missed. They hit my chest and fell. I snatched them up with shaking fingers, trying key after key on the exterior service panel. Nothing. Jonah limped to me. Give. His broken arm was useless, but his left hand was steadier than mine. He found the right key on the 4th try. The panel opened. Inside, emergency phone. Hardline. MTA internal. I lifted it. Dead tone. Then a click. Rail control, a woman's voice said. Identify. For one stupid second, I almost cried. This is Mara Voss, employee ID, my mind blanked. Jonah shouted my number from memory. I had no idea he knew it. I repeated it. We're between DeKalb and Union. Southbound are unauthorized persons in tunnel. Passengers evacuated, armed assault, train movement during evacuation. Kill power. Send NYPD and EMS to Union Street access and DeKalb. Do not move this train. A pause. Then, power removal requested. Stay clear of rails. The tunnel lights dipped. The deep electrical hum changed pitch. The third rail went dead. Not safe exactly. Safer. The older imposter reached the cross passage door. The umbrella woman was already through. Louis staggered after them, but I grabbed his vest. No, they'll get away, and you'll die trying. He hated me for it. I could see that. Then, from the cross passage, came a heavy metal slam. The door shut from the other side, locked. The immediate fight was over. Not cleanly, not satisfyingly. Just over because the route closed, the power died, and the people who could still run had run. Sirens did not arrive instantly. Real life never times rescue that neatly. We waited in the tunnel for 11 minutes that felt longer than the whole night before flashlights appeared from the Union Street direction, real ones, with shouted commands, radios, helmets, NYPD voices, EMS bags banging against hips. By then, Jonah was sitting against the wall, gray-faced, cradling his arm. Louis had a split lip and 2 loose teeth. The businessman vomited beside the train from pain and adrenaline. The crying woman shook so badly a paramedic had to hold both her hands. The teenager with the green backpack was gone. So were the woman with the red umbrella and the older imposter. But the knife man was pinned. The younger imposter too. Phones had recorded faces, voices, injuries, the open service panel, the fake credentials, the baton. Enough to make denial harder. Not impossible. Harder. When transit police finally walked us along the tunnel toward Union Street, I looked back once. The R train sat dark behind us, doors open, windows glowing faintly with abandoned phone screens. In one window, for a second, I thought I saw a folded newspaper pressed against the glass. Then the angle changed. It was only an ad torn loose and hanging crooked. Probably. Jonah saw me looking and said, "Don't." So I didn't. I kept walking. The official explanation came out 36 hours later. Electrical fire under a southbound R train between DeKalb Avenue and Union Street. Emergency evacuation, complicated by passenger panic after an unrelated assault in one car. 3 arrests, 7 injuries, service delays lasting 4 hours. No mention of lists, no mention of fake workers, no mention of why the train regained power during evacuation. I read the statement on my phone while sitting in an urgent care waiting room that smelled like lemon disinfectant and microwaved soup. The television overhead played muted daytime talk shows with subtitles drifting under everyone's heads. Jonah sat beside me in a sling, staring at nothing. The fracture in his forearm wasn't catastrophic. Hairline break near the ulna. Splint for 6 weeks, maybe surgery if healing shifted wrong. His face had a bruise fading yellow under one eye where somebody's elbow or shoulder had caught him in the tunnel. Every few minutes, he flexed his fingers compulsively, checking they still worked. "You gonna keep reading that?" he asked. I locked my phone. "Sorry, you're doing the thing again." "What thing?" "Digging." I leaned back against the plastic chair. My shoulder ached where the older imposter had jerked me down. Nothing broken there, just torn muscle and a web of bruising across my collarbone. Across the room, a little girl played with the paper liner from a tongue depressor while her father filled out forms. Somewhere behind the treatment doors, somebody coughed wetly for almost a minute straight. Normal life, cheap chairs, exhausted nurses, sticky vending machine buttons. The world hadn't ended. That felt strange. Jonah exhaled slowly. You slept? Not really. Me neither. He wasn't angry at me anymore. That would have been easier in some ways. Anger burns hot and clean. What sat between us now was harder to organize. We had crossed some ugly, invisible line together underground, and now every normal conversation sounded slightly rehearsed. A nurse opened the door and called his name. When he stood, he swayed once from exhaustion. I reached for him automatically. He gave me a tired smile. Still here, unfortunately, that's the spirit. But before he followed the nurse, he stopped beside my chair. You're not going back to work tomorrow, he said. I looked away. Mara, I don't know how not to. That's not the same thing. Then he disappeared through the swinging door. I sat there another 10 minutes listening to the television captions scroll by before my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message this time, just an image attachment. My stomach tightened before I opened it. It was grainy, pulled from security footage somewhere. Timestamped 11:42 p.m. Atlantic Avenue Barclay Station. The woman with the red umbrella stood near the turnstiles looking directly up at the camera. Beside her was the teenage boy with the green backpack, and next to them stood Earl Collins, the retired transit worker who had handed me the list. All three were walking together. I stared at the image until the pixels blurred. Then another message arrived beneath it. You looked at the umbrella. No reply option. No sender information. Just that sentence. A nurse called my name before I could decide whether to delete the message or save it. Internal investigations moved fast at first, then slow, then sideways. I spent 2 days in conference rooms under fluorescent lights, answering the same questions from different people with different titles. MTA investigators, transit police, a woman from the city legal department who spoke so gently, it made me distrust her immediately. Did I personally witness the train regaining power? Yes. Did I observe unauthorized personnel? Yes. Could I identify them? One of them, maybe. Could I explain why passengers evacuated before emergency responders arrived? Because we thought we were going to die in the tunnel. That answer usually ended the line of questioning for a minute. Luis Ortega backed most of my account. So did the businessman, whose name turned out to be Daniel Kerr, 47, male, insurance adjuster from Bay Ridge. He had needed 12 stitches in his scalp. The crying woman from the train refused interviews after the first day. Jonah cooperated only because I asked him to. The knife attacker was real, easy to process. Prior arrests, unstable housing, history of assault. Transit police liked him because he made the story understandable. Violence from one disturbed man. Electrical malfunction. Panic. The younger imposter with the baton existed too. Several blurry videos caught him before he disappeared during the confusion after responders arrived. But nobody found him afterward. Same with the older man and the woman with the red umbrella. Gone. The official position became cautious very quickly. Unverified reports amid a traumatic event. That phrase showed up a lot. The list itself should have mattered more. Except I had torn it apart in the tunnel. Transit police recovered half of it from my coat pocket and another soaked fragment near the walkway. Enough to confirm it existed, not enough to trace cleanly. The logo was fake. The paper came from a common office copier. Fingerprints smudged beyond use. When I asked about the handwritten note referencing the Stillwell incident, one investigator frowned at me blankly and said, "What Stillwell incident?" Like the phrase meant nothing. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it was bait. 3 days after the evacuation, I went back to work. Jonah told me not to. Lewis texted me that I was insane. They were probably both right, but routine can feel medicinal after fear. You cling to schedules, coffee times, passwords, familiar hallways. The operations office in Lower Manhattan looked exactly the same as before. Beige cubicles, buzzing lights, someone's old Yankees calendar still stuck on March, a burnt smell from the communal toaster oven. My supervisor, Denise Harmon, 53, female, met me near the elevators. "You look terrible," she said. "Good morning to you too." She hugged me before I could react. That nearly broke me more than the tunnel had. Because kindness after adrenaline feels unbearable sometimes. "You should have taken more leave," she said quietly. "I needed normal. You picked the wrong building." We both laughed a little too hard at that. Then she handed me a paper cup of coffee and lowered her voice. Transit police came by. My stomach tightened immediately. What now? They wanted access logs from route operations. She shrugged. It already pulled everything. Did they find anything? That depends who you ask. Not reassuring. I spent most of the morning pretending to work, while actually rereading maintenance records from the night of the evacuation. Power fluctuations, emergency override requests, signal interruptions. At 1:17 a.m., exactly 4 minutes before the train restarted in the tunnel, an authenticated remote authorization had cleared the southbound rail segment for temporary power restoration. Approved by employee credentials belonging to a maintenance supervisor who had died 8 months earlier. I stared at the screen for a long time. Human error, I thought immediately. Old credentials not properly disabled, shared passwords, administrative laziness. That was the reasonable answer, but my hands still shook. Denise rolled her chair over beside me. "You okay?" "Yeah, lie." She looked at the monitor. "You're not supposed to have this file open." "I know. You should close it." "I know." Neither of us moved for a second. Then she said quietly, "Mara, there are rumors." "What kind of rumors?" Denise hesitated. "About informal safety bulletins." I turned toward her slowly. "From who?" "Operators, cleaning crews, night maintenance, old stuff." She rubbed her temple. "You know how transit employees are. Everybody has stories." "That's not an answer." "No." She looked genuinely tired. "It's the only one I have." After work, I took the subway home because apparently I had lost all instinct for self-preservation. Crowded platform at 59th Street. Smell of wet newspapers and brake dust. Busker somewhere down the corridor playing saxophone badly enough to hurt. Everything ordinary now felt staged. Every passenger became briefly suspicious. A woman scratching her wrist too hard. A man staring at route maps without blinking enough. A teenager counting gum wrappers in his lap. I hated myself for it. The train arrived with the usual gust of tunnel heat. People boarded. People scrolled phones. Someone argued quietly about dinner plans over earbuds. Normal. I got on anyway. At first, I stood near the doors out of habit. Then I realized my breathing had gone shallow and moved to sit instead. Across from me, an exhausted nurse slept with her head against the window. Beside her, a construction worker watched baseball highlights without sound. Nobody strange. Nobody from the list. The train rolled south. At Atlantic Avenue Barclays, more passengers boarded. One of them carried a folded newspaper tucked under his arm. My pulse jumped so hard it hurt. The man noticed me staring and frowned. "Problem?" "No," I said quickly. "Sorry." He took a seat at the far end of the car. Not him, just a commuter. My stop came and went before I realized it. I stayed on accidentally all the way to 36th Street, the same station where the man in the pea coat had stepped off. When the doors opened, cold air slid through the car, carrying the smell of rain from street level. Nobody got on. Nobody got off except me. I stood on the platform, listening to the departing train rattle away. The station looked smaller than I remembered, dirt caught in the tile grout, old water stains spreading across the ceiling near the downtown sign, a rat darting along the opposite track bed. A transit employee swept near the stairs. For one irrational second, I considered asking him about the list. Instead, I bought a coffee from the vending machine upstairs and walked home through drizzle. Almost ordinary. That's the phrase I keep coming back to, because life afterward did continue. Jonah healed slowly. Physical therapy twice a week. He moved out of the building 3 months later, closer to his sister in Queens. We still text sometimes, but less than before. Trauma rearranges people unevenly. Lewis transferred to daytime maintenance. Daniel Kerr sued the city. The official report blamed poor emergency coordination and inadequate communication during tunnel evacuation procedures. Recommendations were made, committees formed, meetings scheduled. The city absorbed it the way cities absorb most terrible things. By morning, another delay always arrives. I tried for a while to let it end there. Mostly, I succeeded. Then 6 months later, I was reviewing overnight incident logs when I found a note attached to a conductor complaint from the queue line. Passenger repeatedly asking riders whether this train stops at Rector Street. Removed at Canal Street without incident. I stared at the screen. Tiny report, barely important, probably coincidence. I almost closed it. Instead, without really thinking, I checked the attachment folder. There was a still image from platform security footage. Grainy. Late night. A man in a navy pea coat holding a folded newspaper against his chest. The timestamp showed he'd boarded at 59th Street. And standing 20 feet behind him on the platform, half turned away from the camera beneath a black umbrella, was Jonah. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going.